Welcome back to Within Tolerance podcast. This is a podcast of machinists, shop owners, just like you, getting to nerd out and geek out with other people in the industry. So this week, my name's Dylan Jackson. I'm from Protein Machining. I'm your host, and I'm joined with Easton from Moria Manufacturing. So
Hey,
welcome, Easton, and thanks for coming on again.
yeah, thanks for having me on again.
Um, so first things first, some of you may have seen on our Instagram or our Discord, Peyton has decided for personal reasons to leave the podcast. Um, and we are, I'm bummed to have to say it, but all the best to him. And I only hope that, everything is going all right for him. Um, and yeah, we'll get right into it. So, Easton, thanks for being a guest host. You ended up actually being our second one because Jake was on last week, but thanks for joining me, man.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, I had a ton of fun last time, and so it's cool to kind of come back, and it's a kind of a nice thing where last time I was just getting the Speedio, and now I've gotten to kind of play with a little bit more, and so it's kind of fun to be able to kind of get back to it and talk a little bit about that now that I've had that experience and be able to kind of share a little bit with that since you've had your Speedio for a lot longer than I have, and you've helped me a ton and everything. So it's kind of cool to chat about things like that and just kind of
Yeah,
see how
well,
your shop is going too. So
you've also we've been playing a gut check back and forth with the FCR, and I know Emery Rempel, like the first thing he said was like, "Oh, you got to tell us about Speedios eating aluminum," and I was like, "Oh, believe me, we will for sure talk about that because you'll send me speeds and feeds that you're trying with the FCR. You got yours and we're running it before me, and like man, I was nervous hitting that button for the first time, and yeah, it's been really cool,
I think I may have hit the limit last night, and I don't know if I did or not, and I'm not willing to go any farther.
and
Um,
that was
so
what step over.
that was a 0.75 inch step over, 0.3125 step down at 8 thou feet per tooth, which works out to be like 240 inches a minute.
Geez, so 56 cubic inches a minute.
Yeah, it was just eating. It was just it sounded the exact same. It didn't sound any different than the previous times I ran it. The spindle load was only like 5% higher, but it's just like at 45% spindle load and that amount of material removal, I'm now at the point where I'm more concerned about the pull stud than anything else, and I'd rather not go any harder than that.
Yeah, well, and to that point, actually, so I once you sent me and you posted on the Discord, the Instant Machinist Discord, about the new Brother W series machine.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, the W1000, the S1000 replacement.
yeah, so I sent that immediately over to my tech Scott and was like, "Hey, this is pretty cool. 35 horsepower is scary though." And he was like, or I didn't send over the link. I just said, "Wow, the D0 control and 35 horsepower on the new W series is pretty crazy." And he was like, "What are you talking about?" And I
I
sent
This
him a link.
exact same thing as so I texted my apps guy right as we were talking about that, and my apps guy responded. He goes, "You're talking the W1000?" And I was like, "Yeah." He goes, "I know nothing about that machine." He's like, "I'm excited to see what it can do."
Yeah. So what my tech was saying though is that he's never seen a pull stud break from a cut. He's seen them pull out though. He said, "I really hope that they increase the drawbar strength." Um,
Interesting. Okay.
yeah. So that makes me a little more hopeful that like maybe
Well,
you can use a little bit
man,
more of that
wasn't it?
35 horsepower.
Didn't Irwin? Wasn't he using a reduced shank helical tool and he pulled the pull stud or he snapped the pull stud mid cut on his 27K?
So I don't know if he snapped it or if he pulled it out and that's what snapped it. Because like I know Andrew Henry had also broken one off, but that was also a crash, you know. So like I don't know if it's the pull stud being pulled out of the spindle that then breaks it off as the spindle collides with it and all that stuff, or if it's actually the pull stud snapping that leads to the tool releasing, you know.
Yeah,
Like I'm not.
that's it's the chicken and the egg kind of thing. I
I
mean,
was
either way, it's
just
not
gonna
going to
say
be
that.
bad. It's not going to be good, but
Yeah, so
it,
I'll be really interested to see what comes out. Like my tech joked, he was like, "Yeah, I told your salesman that if he gets you some information on it, that you'll buy one." And I was like, "Well, by the time they get to the U.S., we'll see." Because like the
well,
X2s are just getting here, and they've been out for what, a year and a half or something like that.
so the other thing I was actually looking at the W1000 again today. Have you noticed that the tool change time is faster?
Hmm.
It's got a faster tool change and higher cutting feed rate.
Yeah. Well, I mean, they do that every single upgrade just incrementally so that they can stay ahead of robo drill and keep getting their big orders for all the big phone companies, I think.
Yeah, I mean it looks like a sweet machine, and I was like, I mean, obviously, I don't even know what's going on. I mean, I think we'll talk about this probably a little bit later, but I think my next purchase is probably going to be a lathe. But kind of after that, I was a little bit looking at like the F600
Hmm.
because it'd be nice to have like a Speedio for aluminum and then a Speedio for steel kind of thing. And the F600 seems really dedicated towards that steel kind of application. But
Yeah, it is for sure.
what's interesting is the W1000 looks like it's kind of a combo. So you could really use the W1000 for kind of a dual purpose almost.
Right.
And
Well, yeah, like the F series is built with the same traveling column that like the R series are, and they say I think they allude to that being better for hard cutting, but it's also better for automation. Is also what I've heard is that it's geared pretty heavily towards like auto part manufacturers.
from the grapevine, kind of my understanding is that the F600 is also a test platform for 5 axis.
Oh,
Um,
really?
that they're looking to do kind of what DMG did with the DMP70, where they've got the traveling column so that you can put a fixed trunnion in there.
Oh, that makes sense. Yeah, totally.
And so that's kind of my understanding of where the F600 might fit in. And I think it was Greg said on the Discord that their plan with the W1000 was kind of just to get the D00 out there on their least sold machine in a way
Right. Right.
to
Right. Yeah.
like test platform it, which makes a lot of sense. And so I'm wondering if that's kind of their thought process between the F600 too.
Yeah, I could see that. I'm excited for the possibilities of that D0 control, like being able to have apps written for your control to do different things seems like a really possible big upgrade. We'll have to see kind of how it all works its way out, but
Yeah,
um,
and the fact that they've got the 500 megabyte memory standard, and I think up to 3 gigabytes now is also really cool. Not that I would have ever hit that limit yet, but like just that is the right, or that's the move in the right direction instead of like traditional control manufacturers where they're like, yeah, you can get a couple kilobytes of memory kind of thing.
yeah, cough cough, Fanic, if you're listening,
Yeah.
get your shit together. Like, um,
And like
so
Haas charges like 6 grand for like 32 gigs or something stupid like that.
right, and I've heard and never been able to like track down a source that can confirm it that all of that memory is already there, at least between the two lower options, and that they're just software unlocking it.
Yeah, that's just stupid. I mean, it's like obviously it's a little bit different because like Tormach machines run on a small PC, but we've got 80 gigs of memory in there.
Right.
I mean, it's not that hard. It doesn't cost a lot.
No,
I mean,
no, it really doesn't.
and it's, but anyways, I mean, it's going to be really cool to see that D00 control a little bit more. I'm also really interested just to see how they kind of go for like things like where they've got the touchscreen. Like, I mean, I've always been a pretty big proponent against touchscreens just because you get coolant on your hands and like that just seems like a bad idea to put that on a machine tool. But
Right.
Brother is known for two things, which is speed and reliability. So I have a feeling that they've got a pretty reliable touchscreen kind of worked out. Otherwise, they wouldn't go for it.
Right. Well, and what I love is that at least from the pictures, it still has all of the normal buttons and knobs too. Like the thing that I don't like is when they go all touchscreen and it's like, oh, now I've got to drag my finger for feed override or something like that.
Yeah, no, that's I think a touchscreen would make it cool for like going through the soft menus and things like that. But like nothing replaces like good buttons, for sure.
Yeah.
The
So
only thing I'm
I'm
missing
pumped.
on that control that I'm not 100% sure if it's there or not is the shortcut key. I don't know if they removed that or not. And that's by far one of my favorite buttons on that control. So,
It's pretty epic. Yeah. We've talked about that off air a few times, and like it's super handy.
yeah, I mean, you don't need it on like a Haas or anything where like the offsets page is a separate button, but like coming from a Fanuc control on my lathe and on my older Miyano mill that I ended up selling, um, that shortcut key is killer.
Yeah. Oh, totally. Yeah. When like you can look in the pictures and there's at least a home button, so I would think they'd probably keep some kind of shortcut button.
Yeah, just from kind of the picture, I don't remember which one I was looking at, but it kind of looked like it was almost an on-screen shortcut kind of thing now.
Yeah, at the bottom. Yeah, it does kind of look like that. So yeah, we'll have to see. I'm really looking forward to at least some videos or something of this thing ripping through some material.
Well, kind of going to that same thing, I found I was looking for a W1000 video today, and I found they've been running their same demo that they've been running since the TC machines. That one like where it's like a block on a fourth axis, and then they end up cutting this like S-shaped curve in the front face of it.
Hmm.
I don't know if you've seen that one.
Oh yeah.
So it's their like 500 demo. Well, they've got a video now that came out last week that was them running that demo on a S500X2,
Oh cool.
and they're running the FCR in the first part of it, but they're only running it at like 192 inches a minute.
Come on.
I can't. They don't give like depths and widths of cut, but it looks like they're maybe taking a deeper depth of cut, but like a shallower width of cut too.
Hmm.
So maybe I should back mine off, but
Nah. Well, I don't know. I mean, run it for a little while and see if you get any fretting or anything like that.
I haven't gotten it yet. I keep checking the holder, even after the kind of two minor i- crashes per se or bumps, whatever you want to call them, that I've had with it. One of them put I thought I bought bigger stock than I did, and so when I programmed it, I thought I had an extra quarter inch of stock on the bottom, but in reality, where that extra stock was the Versa grips. So it came down for, and then I've got my no engagement feed rate set to 750 inches a minute. So it just dropped down and went straight through two Versa grips,
Oof.
and it cut right through them. Uh, at the same feeds and speeds, it just cut through hardened steel.
Wow.
Took a tiny little skim cut off the top of my orange vise, which was a little bit unfortunate. Um, but and then the next one, I was making these like parts that were a replica of a casting for one of my customers. And it had that little bit piece of flashing that happens after you kind of if you poorly program and you don't go deep enough in op 1 that when you flip the part over, even once you face it to final size, there's still an onion skin around the part, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And so obviously that'll get cleaned up by the chamfer mill later, but I figured why put a bunch of extra like thing that could chip out my chamfer mill or whatever. So I figured I'd just drop the FCR as a 2D contour around the part, and I quick added the toolpath, posted it out, didn't check the simulation, and it dropped down. And as it does the lead in, the body hit one of the features in the part. The body collided with the part, and it just bumped my vise out of alignment a little bit, pulled the part out of the vise slightly, and got a bunch of like aluminum gummed up on the FCR. So that was also unfortunate. But I just dunked it in some sodium hydroxide yesterday, and I was able to kind of dissolve off all of the aluminum. So
Nice. Yeah, I mean, for as fast as the Speedios move and like how aggressive that tool is, like I feel like those are pretty minor, but I mean, still butt puckering for sure. But it could be way worse.
yeah, it's one of those things where the first time it happened, I was like, I'm going to be super careful. I'm not going to make any mistakes from now on because that was really scary. And then maybe 3 weeks later, I made the same or made a similar mistake. So
Right.
I just need to maybe slow down a little bit and think about things and definitely check my simulation and not just blindly run it.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, we were texting about that earlier. I've been bit by that 2 or 3 times over the last 4 or 5 months, and like it's so dumb. It bothers me every time I do it, and I shouldn't do it more than once. But it's one of those things where it's like, oh, I've reposted this code 5 times, and this is the sixth time that I'm trying something, and I'm sure it's good. And then of course that's when I make some stupid mistake.
Yeah, and it's one of those things where I on the Tormach, I never really made accurate tools. I mean, like all my tools in my tool library were like Cat 40 holders, and I didn't really care. It was just
Yeah.
like that default ER32 holder that Fusion slaps on there. And on the Speedio, I've been really meticulous about modeling every holder and stick out and everything because it's like things happen so fast on these machines that it's you got to make sure it's right before you post it. And I guess that's the idea with Camplete. I don't think it needs to be anywhere close to that for a 3-axis mill. I just think you need like with the FCR, I've got like every radius and everything like that modeled. So if I had ran a simulation, it would have shown me that that would have crashed.
Oh, totally. Yeah, and I think that I would get Camplete for 3 axis if I was programming for other people a lot. Like if most of my business was contract programming, I could totally see having a real verification software as a necessity. But for what I'm doing, 3 axis, just I can be careful. I'm not in that much of a rush.
Exactly. And I think that's where you get bitten is where you're like, it's on that last part or whatever. And you're like, I just need to like, get this part done. And that's when you
Yeah,
make mistakes. So,
yeah. Well, the last time I did it was when I was making Katie's engagement ring, and like I took the I was doing the cutoff programming for like it's like a little full radius, I think 20 thou thick key seat cutter, and I was using that to cut it off, and like I kept having to add more or cut more radially, and so change my tool path and change my stock to leave. Um, and I literally posted I think 5 times, and on the sixth one I was like, oh, I just need to get rid of these lead-ins and change it so it's like this, and like, oh, I'll drop my plunge feed rate to like 70 inches a minute because it's plunging outside of the stock. Well, because I got rid of the radiuses in the lead in and lead out, it ended up bleeding in and leading out right over the part and just like smoked all of the flutes off of that
oh,
tool.
that
Yeah,
sucks. That's
and like
not
it
like a
was
standard tool either.
no, it was an expensive tool, and on top of it, I had an hour and a half of runtime into that ring already, and I was like, "Well, this is great. I'm just gonna go home and retry
That's
tomorrow."
exactly like I was going to say. It's just like at that point, you're like, all right, I'm done.
Yeah,
And you like pack up and you're like, it's time to get some sleep.
yeah, yeah. It was definitely one of those times at night. It's like I just can't. I can't right now. I'll come back. I'll be better tomorrow, but right now I just need to forget that I was here. So,
For sure. No, I mean,
so
that's,
besides the Speedio, though, you have also been busier than ever on the lathes.
yeah, primarily the lathe, because I mean, there's still like a turret alarm I've got on the larger lathe, and I just need to put a little bit of time into figuring out why it's unhappy. Um, but so I've just been running everything in the BNC still, and that thing, there were days where that thing was running. There were like Saturday and Sunday, that thing ran probably 16 hours straight.
That's
Um, only stopping for like a minute or two for a bar change. Um, it's just I it's been a fun experience in kind of figuring out process reliability is like the really big one. And I know that gets thrown around a lot, but it's like turning aluminum sucks. I really hate turning aluminum. And figuring out how to get aluminum to break a chip in a machine with less than like 8,000 RPM sucks. And so I've got 5,000 RPM on the spindle, and it'll start breaking chips. And by breaking chips, I mean the chips will only be like 8 inches long
Hmm.
until it gets to less than like an inch in diameter. And then the chips are like 3 feet long.
Ooh.
And the process reliability of that is pretty much zero. I mean, that just wraps around the part, and it's just this awful game of like having to open the door, clear off the bird's nest, and everything like that. So I was like, I tried different radius nose inserts. I called Walter. So I'm a huge ISCAR tooling guy. And I called ISCAR and they said, nope, we don't have anything with a chip breaker. I was like, someone's got to make a VCMT insert with a chip breaker. Well, it turns out nobody does because I don't think you're supposed to back turn the entire part. Um, but for this process, I was hoping to do the part in two ops, one op in the mill, one op in the lathe kind of thing.
Right.
And so I was back turning the entire taper. So the part's like a cone shape kind of thing. And so after kind of figuring out like that nobody makes, I like called Sandvik, nobody made an insert that could do that geometry backwards and break a chip. And so I was like trying to figure it out, and then I was like, I kind of have a dumb idea. So I called my ISCAR rep again, and he was like, no, that's not a dumb idea. In fact, you can actually increase your feeds and speeds a bunch, and which is using the parting tool to rough out the whole part.
Really?
So they had me running at 700 surface feet on a parting tool and plunging at 8 thou feet per rev with this tool.
Wow.
And so I just peck rough the whole thing. It just like grooves, steps over, grooves, groove, 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 and that breaks chips. And so the chips were short enough that they wouldn't bird's nest. And then I come back and I just do the finish pass with the other tool.
Oh, how cool.
So it was like it just staircase steps the whole part out and then comes back and finishes. And that ended up being a really reliable way to do them. And then and then again with the oil, I'm not really having any issues with tool life. I mean, I was using the same parting tool for both, and I changed an insert. I didn't change an insert actually over about 750 parts. I think I didn't change any inserts. Um,
Whoa.
yeah, it was nuts. That parting tool works fantastic, and this I was actually just talking with Cobra Frame Building. He was looking for a parting tool,
Oh, Joe. Yeah.
and so Joe was looking for a parting tool, and I gave him a couple links to the parting tool I run, and he just got it the other day, and he was like, "Wow, this thing is nuts! You can go like 5,000 feet per rev." I was like, "Yep." I'm like, "Drop that feed rate down, and you can also finish with it." But it's like
Wow.
they're tangentially clamped inserts. So as you cut, the insert just gets forced tighter into the pocket on the parting blade.
Right. Right.
And then it's got this V groove in the back of the insert so that it locks into the holder. So you can do side turning with it too.
That's what I was just about to ask you because I've seen the tangentially ones, but some of them you can't turn with.
Yeah, you can turn with this. I wasn't doing that, but I've definitely used that. I mean, you can just rough out a groove and then come back and finish the whole inside of the groove with one tool. Um,
Damn.
it's a really sweet tool, and their blades aren't terribly expensive. I've blown a couple of them up, and I keep a spare one now, because it's arguably the most important tool in the lathe.
Right.
And yeah, it was definitely an interesting game of process reliability, and it really sucked too at the same time because I don't have a chip conveyor. So every there was this one night where I could have kept making parts, but I didn't have enough chip bins to deal with the chips. So they filled up the lathe and I didn't have anywhere to put them. So I was done for the night.
Oh wow.
And that was really interesting. And that was like, so I went and made sure I had extra chip bins on hand. And it's like the fact that the lathe just builds up full of chips was not a good situation. And it's not that I don't have a chip conveyor for lack of trying, but it's like it's hard to find a chip conveyor that fits this lathe because it's a really small chip conveyor. It's like a 9 or 10 inch wide chip conveyor, and it's only about like 2.5 feet long. So it needs to
Right.
be a really small conveyor. And you can buy a conveyor direct from Jurgens, which is the or Jurgensen, and they still make the same conveyor. Like they've still got the designs from Miyano. So I called them a couple, I think last year, and they quoted me just under $8,000 for a conveyor.
Which
And I was like,
is more than you spent on the lathe, isn't it?
yeah. I was like, that's not going to happen. So I've continued to kind of look around and actually ended up finding or talking to uh, Garrett over at Mojo Manufacturing.
Hmm.
And he just got two Miyano BNC 34T, so the twin turret version of my lathe.
Dang, they have a twin turret version. That thing's already tight in there.
Oh, they make one with a sub spindle too. It's the same frame casting too.
Oh man.
Yeah, so where my tailstock, I don't know if you've seen where my tailstock is on my lathe.
Yeah, you did your live cast the other night. I saw.
Yeah, so the where the tailstock is on mine is where the second turret is on his. So the second turret is only for drills. Um, so you put all your drills in one turret and then all your turning tools in the other.
Oh, that's bizarre.
It's super weird, but I think it's something Miyano still does to this day. I think they still sell machines that are like that. Um, I mean, I think Justin will probably correct me if I'm wrong on that one.
Yeah, I'm sure you will.
But it's they definitely make so that's a sweet machine. And there's been a ton of times where I've needed that machine, and because I've run out of turret positions, kind of thing. But
Hmm.
anyways, he got two of them, and one of them didn't work. So he ended up. I was just talking to him about it, and he was like, "Yeah, I got this other one for scrap price, practically, kind of thing." And he's like, "I don't know if I'll ever get it working, but at the end of the day, if it doesn't work, at least it's spare parts for my one that does work." And I was like, "Yeah, that's a great thing to keep around." And I was like, "Out of curiosity, do they have a parts conveyor or a chip conveyor?" He's like, "Yeah, actually, both of them have both." I was like, "Well," and he's like, "And if I don't fix this within 6 months, I'll end up parting it out."
Huh.
Um, I was like, "Well, let me know in 6 months if you don't get that fixed. I'll buy that chip conveyor and that parts conveyor off of you." And he's like, "Well, you know what? At the end of the day, if I do get it working, it's going to be my second op lathe, and I don't need a chip conveyor and I don't need a parts conveyor." He's like, "So if you want them, come and get them." So
Oh my goodness.
so I ended up buying those off of him, and I took a weekend and just drove out down to Ohio. So I got to get some sheet metal made up to like funnel everything into the conveyor. But other than that, I've got a conveyor that fits my lathe now. And the parts conveyor is another big one. Beyond the chip removal. So on those parts that I was making, the brass ones, there was the same part number just in two different materials. And the brass ones were a really interesting challenge as well because the brass has a lot higher mass than the aluminum parts did. So the inertia is higher as you part off. Um, and so as it parts off, it hits the parts catcher bin harder,
Hmm.
and it dents the parts. And then, and these parts are a no scratch, no dent on the print kind of thing. They're cosmetic.
Right.
So that didn't work. So um, I ended up figuring out a way to slow down the parting tool to drop that into the parts basket a little bit lighter, and that solved that. But then as they accumulate in the parts bin, they start denting each other again. So I was running about 50% the number of parts per cycle that I was running on the aluminum ones with the brass ones. So the ultimate solution is to have those come out in a single file line out of the lathe. Um,
Totally. Yeah.
and so
So the parts catcher will catch the parts and then dump them into the uh,
conveyor.
conveyor. Okay.
Yeah. It's and my lathe is already set up for a conveyor. It's got like a little access panel you just pop out, and then you take out the bin where the parts normally drop in, and that's the conveyor just drops right in there.
Oh, that's great. That'll be such a big upgrade for those parts.
And so I'm thinking about getting into like a PLC probably, or maybe an Arduino. I've got this kind of deep distrust of Arduinos,
Hmm.
just because they don't seem very industrial, and I've seen them flake out before.
Right.
Um, but maybe an Arduino will be fine. But just doing something similar to kind of what Grimsmo has on his Tornos, with like a little carousel that the parts drop into, so I can put like one part per bin, and that gives me enough time to then walk by every 5 minutes or whatever, and grab a part out and put it in an egg carton kind of thing.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a good idea. That would be great.
So
Um,
yeah.
so are you bar pulling then on your lathe?
Yeah, so I've got a bar feeder. It's a Fidec, which is actually the Taiwanese brand name under L&S. But it's interfacing that with the electronics on my lathe is kind of like doing brain surgery. Is it just super scary because if you don't wire it correctly, you can fry the electronics, and the likelihood that I find electronics to fit in that lathe is fairly low. Um, like reliable, like getting a replacement board or whatever is not super easy. So I've thought about integrating the bar feeder, but as it kind of gets more and more to the point where um, that lathe is, it's kind of like I did end up speed reading the goal over the weekend,
Oh,
and when
nice.
they're talking about the NCX machine and how it's the bottleneck, but also if the bottleneck goes down, it's like they can't replace it necessarily
Right.
because the downtime that they'll have from replacing it is worse than the bottleneck.
Yeah.
And
Oh,
that's
yeah.
kind of the situation I'm in where, yeah, it would really save me a lot of time if I had a bar feeder, but the risk of being without a lathe is worse than just bar pulling 3 foot bars kind of thing.
Yeah. Well, and it seems like you've got some pretty good reliability with your puller too. So it doesn't sound like a giant loss in productivity.
No, it's not too bad. I mean, I've got to get a new spindle liner because when you buy spindle liners from Trusty Cook, they've got this giant library of spindles. So you just tell them what machine you have, and they say, okay, yes, we've got that spindle, or no, we need you to measure it. And on my spindle, they told me that they had the correct dimensions,
Hmm.
and they do for the most part, but I think whatever customer gave them the dimensions was getting these special like shorter spindle liners. So mine stops about 8 inches before the chuck kind of thing.
Oh, weird.
And so when the bar gets shorter than like 8 inches, the bar puller becomes a little bit less reliable in the pull length because the bar is now sagging when the chuck opens.
Right. Yeah. That totally makes sense.
So it's pulling at like an angle. And
So the
so,
chuck can clamp on it kind of funky.
Yeah, and I don't know if the chuck will pull the bar straight, but it might be shorter. So then you get parts that don't clean up.
Oh, okay. I
So
gotcha.
I just need to get a new spindle liner, and that's always one of the most frustrating things to buy because it's a piece of plastic tubing that
Right.
costs
Yeah.
$250.
Yeah.
And
But we all saw Grimsmo's struggle. Like we've all had those projects where you're like, oh, well, I can make this for $20, and then you know
yeah,
$100 later and another $100 in time later, and you're like, well, I should have just bought that. Great. Okay.
exactly. That's Trusty Cook definitely makes the best spindle liners that I've used. I think the JM Burns ones are supposedly a little bit better, but those are like $1,000 or something like that. So I'll stick with the Trusty Cook ones. At least they're not as bad as the ones that Haas sells with their lathes, or at least that came with like the um 2014 ST10.
hmm
Those things just slide right out of your lathe.
Oh,
They
that's
like
completely useless.
don't stay in very well, and they're just cheap. They just suck.
Yeah.
And the Trusty Cook ones are really nice. The bigger scam from Trusty Cook is actually the inch and a quarter spindle liner for my lathe, which I'm using,
hmm
because the normal ones have like O-rings on them so that they like grip nicely inside the bore of the lathe.
Right.
But so mine is a 34 millimeter through bore, and it's a inch and a quarter spindle liner. So the thing's just a piece of paper curled into a tube practically. No
Oh,
O-rings or
buddy.
anything. It's just they're charging me $250 for this like super paper thin piece of plastic that's like flexible because it's so thin, but you can't run it's still just enough that it's still necessary kind of thing, but it's just frustrating. It's like
Yeah. You
I
said it was a
could make
32
this
millimeter bore.
34 millimeter.
Okay, so yeah, it's what 30 something thou aside.
Yeah, it's nuts. It's like but it's just enough that like if you don't run it with, so maybe it's not 34 millimeters, so you can run inch and 3/8 through the bore. Um, and so yeah, I mean it's paper thin wall still, but yeah, no, I mean other than that, bar pulling works great. I ended up getting an easy puller. I resisted for a really long time because it's like a $600 bar puller.
hmm
Um, but it's really nice because it's no adjustment or anything like that. It just adapts to the bar size. Um,
Oh, I haven't seen one of these before. I just looked it up. Those are pretty cool.
yeah, it's got these like two urethane springs. It's like using like little chunks of urethane as hydraulic cylinders.
Hmm.
Um, and then so you just do an X like G1X0 F50, and it just goes straight onto the bar, and then you unclamp your chuck and pull it out.
And you haven't had any trouble with it slipping off because it seems like it shouldn't work.
It's got these like knurling kind of looking wheels, so they actually will cut straight into a stainless bar.
Oh wow, really?
Yeah, it'll deep gouge your bar, like
Oh,
talking like 50 thou deep into the bar kind of thing.
okay, that makes more sense then. The way it looks in the pictures, it looks like it just slides on there, and yeah, that makes complete sense now.
Yeah, I mean it's the classic thing. You like don't bar pull on a part that's finished stock diameter, but
Right. That's a quite the range too. Like 93 thou to a 1 3/4 round stock. That's a lot.
yeah, it's a really cool invention. It's just ridiculously expensive. Um, I mean that's they'll because you don't have to have all sorts of like end mills and things like that, and lathe tooling lasts for a lot longer. They just find all sorts of other ways to gouge you with lathes. Uh, it's crazy.
Yeah, yeah, that is. I mean, I guess for the increase in productivity, though, you probably made it back, and your first order with it.
Oh, for sure. It's just
just
it,
suck.
it was also one of these situations where on this one part I got it for this one part, and I never got to use it on that part.
Oh,
Stainless steel parts. And I was like, I'm gonna use this, and I'm like, this will fit my turret. This will automate this. I gotta make a whole bunch of these. This will be perfect. I'm like, oh, I can't put the drill and the boring bar in the same turret position. They're too long for each other. So that means I
oh,
need 6 turret positions, not including a bar puller. Um,
that's a bummer.
and so now I got a different parting tool. It's a 2 millimeter parting tool, so I can use it for creating the thread relief groove and for parting off. And then now I can stick the bar puller in there. But yeah, anyways, what's new in Protium? What you got any
Um,
day job? What's going on there?
well, we've got the little clamps I made. I don't think I've shown them on Instagram, but we can talk about those at my day job at Protium right now. I'm working through still that order I was telling you about that my friend kind of just dropped in my lap. I've kind of pushed it off for other more pressing orders the last week or so. So I'm going to be finishing up that this week. And also, I've got some titanium parts to finish up. And I've got some OSG tools to try out. I'm actually really excited to try those out. So I got a few of the Phoenix replaceable head end mills, I guess they're called, or not indexable heads. But I've got a PXAL, which is a right now Japanese only or metric only sizing, and that one's for aluminum and it's supposed to be a pretty good ripper. So I'm going to try that on a part that I've got due next week, and then I've got a few corner radius heads that'll be good for roughing and finishing 3D surfaces, and then I've got a coolant through ball that I'm looking forward to trying out on a personal project first, and then if everything goes well, I'll start adding that into more and more parts that I make.
Gotta
But
say, OSG's pulling like the oldest drug dealer move in the book.
oh
Like
yeah, 100%. They're like,
they're
here, try these out. You'll like them, and then you'll come back forever.
exactly no. I mean, it's gonna be you're gonna be only using replaceable tip coolant through ball nose from now on, kind of thing, and it's those cannot be cheap.
No, no, I'm sure they're not. The biggest thing that I'm actually excited to try out though is so the titanium parts I did a while ago. I talked about ad nauseum about them on here. Was thread milling the little 256 holes, and it takes forever. So they sent one of their tapping heads and some taps to try out to see if I can form tap 6AL reliably with a 256. Because if I
That'll
can
be
tap it
really cool.
reliably, yeah, if I can tap it reliably, I'll save. I think I calculated out to like 75 minutes apart or 65 minutes apart.
That's crazy. That's
Yeah,
wild. I mean,
yeah,
I think I've said to you, my longest cycle time so far on the Speedio was 27 minutes. That's
right,
nuts. I mean,
yeah,
I just used an OSG form tap actually. It was like 2 days ago in 7075, and it was a hole that I did not feel comfortable about, and maybe I was just being a baby about it because it worked really well. But it was 13 millimeters deep at M2.5. Um, and that seemed sketchy to me, but did a fantastic job.
yeah. I really have always loved OSG taps. Like that's we have a standing rule at my day job now that you can't buy anything but OSG or a Mugi unless like they get engineering approval because we've just had too many issues with random tool manufacturers. Uh,
I
but
really
like
like YG1's taps as well, but uh,
I haven't tried them. I'm happy to try them. And there's also uh, Jarvis taps that I've been wanting to try, but they just don't have a super wide variety.
I
Um,
got these Vega taps that are like 6 inches long for quarter 20 that I still need to try out.
oh, they're
Actually,
like pulley taps.
yeah, but they're like reduced shank too.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Those
Um,
are pulley taps exactly.
well, I like the pulley taps from Bilax or however you pronounce that are like
Hmm.
not necessarily reduced shank. so you can't do like a really deep tapped hole with them. You can just
Oh, oh,
reach
oh, oh.
into a tapped hole.
Yeah, I see what you're saying now. Yeah, that's
Because I have
cool.
to tap inch and 3/4 deep or something like that.
What?
Yeah, that's because the idiot engineer at Moria Manufacturing designed their tool tightening fixtures to be. I use the same hole in the that the clamp uses for the split clamp. I
Okay.
use that same hole to bolt the base plate onto the tool tightening fixture.
Oh,
So
okay,
that's a tapped hole from the top of the split all the way through to the bottom of the part.
dude. Yeah, you gotta you gotta not do that.
So
Oh,
we're
man.
we're trying that in the Speedio this weekend.
Oh, I'm sure it'll be fine, but that just sucks. That just really sucks.
So I got like a through spindle coolant drill that I'll poke the hole with. I poke the hole in op. I poke the tap drill size in op 2, and then I poke the clearance hole in op 3, and then I tap. So my positional accuracy has to line up for that tap to go into that hole on op 3, which is probably not a good way to do it, but we're gonna give it a try.
So couldn't you just make the bolt that you use for your little swivel clamp longer and then do a bigger clearance hole and tap less?
So I don't make the swivel clamp. That's a like off the shelf part.
Oh, the whole
Um,
thing is an assembly. I thought you added a cap screw to it.
no, yeah, it's a assembly that is off the shelf.
Oh, okay, that makes more sense.
So that's an
Unfortunate, that
idea,
makes more
but
sense.
I don't know. I mean, it's a. I'm not claiming it's a smart design or anything. It's just it ends up working out and it looks pretty clean. And it's one of those things where maybe I'm just being kind of stubborn and changing it. But
Hey, if it works, it works. I understand.
so
Well, I look forward to seeing your tests. I know I've had really good luck with form taps super deep. Like we've done
oh, this isn't a
440
form
down
tap.
over an inch.
This is a
Oh,
spiral
cut
point.
that. Oh, oh boy.
Yeah.
Well,
No, I couldn't find a form tap in this length that I needed.
okay.
I like
That makes
reached
sense.
out to OSG and I don't think they make one that's will work for this.
They will make custom taps though.
I don't know if I'm at that point yet. Up until this point, this is kind of funny to admit, but I've been hand tapping that hole on every single tool tightening fixture up until this point, like hundreds of them. I just hand tap that hole. I like start it in the machine, and then I just finish like punching it all the way through by hand. But there's no reason to do that by hand anymore.
No, definitely not if you can get away with it.
Yeah,
Well, that's cool. I look forward to seeing how your test goes. If it goes well, definitely video the second one.
that's always how it goes too. I mean that video I think I sent you yesterday of the FCR doing the 56 cubic inches per minute. I think that was the third part. I finally like calmed down enough to take my hand off the feed hold button.
Uh huh. Yeah, the first video I posted on Instagram of it was also the second or third part. I was like, I can't not like watch this with my hand on like the e stop and feed hold. Like this could go drastically wrong.
Yeah. So, have you tried the 256 in the titanium yet? Because you said
No,
you were working on some titanium parts.
no. So the next parts are untapped, but I do have extra material from the first run of the parts with the taps in them or the threaded holes in them. So I'm just gonna cut off a piece of that and go to town and do like I want to go until I break a tap so I know how many holes to expect.
Yeah. No, I mean just keep
If I'm
going
saving an hour apart, like I don't mind changing out a tap every 10 parts if that's the case, you know?
for sure. I mean it goes back to kind of what there's that tour from Orange Vice um, from that NYC CNC put up,
Hmm.
where I think Eric's just talking about, he's like, if it's been in the cut like that long, he's like, you can probably get a little bit longer out of it, but just change it out.
Oh yeah, yeah. We went to at work. I convinced them maybe a year ago. We were having all these tap issues, uh, where the tap looked fine and the hole was okay, but when it got to inspection, it was tough to like check with a thread gauge. So we would sometimes have to chase them or clean them again or something like that. And I
I
finally
like
was like,
vaguely remember this for
yeah,
some reason. I don't know if
I
you
might have
posted about this on Instagram or something.
I don't think so, but I think maybe we talked about it. But I ended up I was just like, hey, these parts are worth enough. Just change out the tap every run. Like it doesn't matter. It's a $10 tap or a $20 tap for a run of a ton of parts that are worth a lot of money. Like why are we even talking about this? And they were like, oh, I guess that makes sense.
For sure.
So if you're doing something where process reliability actually comes into play, like it just makes sense. Like yeah, you might be theoretically wasting money, but the second you break a tool instead of replacing it, you lose that money just in time.
Exactly. I mean, it's important to figure that out. So just maybe the best thing would be just to take a block of titanium, um, and just do that like cheese hole pattern kind of thing on it,
Yeah, yeah,
and just
exactly.
keep punching holes in a grid pattern until. And I mean, that's also a good way to test the drill reliability.
Right. Well, and like the Go drill, that's why I recommended it to you because it lasted, I don't know, 200 plus holes in titanium. But I did buy a coolant through version of it this time, which I'm unsure if the Speedio is going to have enough pressure to really matter. Um, so we'll see. I'm going to try it out and see if I can just go to depth instead of pecking. And then if I can't, then I'll know real quick.
Speedio through spindle coolant reminds me of like I'd love to have access to like a Speedio for an hour kind of thing that has the factory through spindle just to see how they plummet,
Oh, yeah.
because I was watching that video of that S500 X2
Hmm.
that I was talking about earlier, and their through spindle coolant comes down the second it finishes the tool change,
Oh, really?
and there's like no delay whatsoever. And so
Huh.
somehow they're keeping the thing preloaded.
Well, I wonder if they just don't turn it off.
Is that okay for the rotary seal?
I would think so. I think that it. So I'll need to double check with my tech, but if I had to guess, Brother is smart enough to trigger the solenoid that blocks it off. Like if you turn on through spindle and then you hit the coolant button, you can still hear it primed. It just stops at that solenoid. My guess is that they trigger that solenoid at a tool change too.
Got it. Okay.
I would think. I
Well,
have
because they
zero
were
idea,
running a
and I
mix in the video. What was interesting is I think they were running a mix of through spindle and non through spindle tools,
oh really?
but it was like instantly kicking on,
Huh?
and that's what I don't know how that works. Um,
Could just be a different pump type too. I mean, ours is what a piston
yeah,
pump, and so having a
because
different pump
it's
might just be way faster.
through spindle drills are scary in the with that pump, just because the drill will get into the cut before that pump kicks on, even with like a 6 second delay kind of thing.
Huh.
And
Well, you know what? I wonder. So you and I were talking yesterday, and Pete, PT Ox on the Discord posted that thing of adding the fifth or sixth tab in a toolpath, and I
yeah,
wonder if you could also add through spindle delay as another operation in that tab, so you could change
for
it and
sure.
vary
I
it
think
for
what
each.
I've been doing up until now is I just put like my feed height at like 1 inch above the part,
That's so
and so
crazy.
it's just it's feeding from like really high up, which gives it enough time to like kick on.
Yeah. Yeah, I
Um,
mean, it's so funny because like you brought this up maybe a week or two ago, and I was like, I don't know what you're talking about. I have no problem. And then we realized like you're drilling aluminum at like 100 inches a minute, and I'm drilling titanium at like 2 inches a minute. And like I was like, oh, there's the big difference. Is like mine, even if I start real close to the part, doesn't has plenty of time for the through spindle to kick on before it gets to the part.
yeah, no, it's crazy. I mean, like I think again, I was talking in the Discord yesterday. I got to find a new drill because that Go drill isn't working for me. Um, just it chatters like crazy on that whole exit. It sounds like what you'd imagine running over a box of kittens with a car. Sounds like it's so bad. It's one of those like chatter sounds that you like hear it and you're like, that is not right. And the hole is just all scored up from like the drill whipping inside the hole essentially.
Yeah, that's so strange because like I don't think I've ever had a drill chatter unless it had like some serious run out or something like that.
I haven't
But
checked the run out, but I don't think it's bad. I mean, it's in a Mari tool ER holder with a Mari tool collet,
yeah, I would think. Well, I mean,
and it's the correct size collet.
yeah, I'm
And
talking like thousands of run out, not like a thou of run out or five tenths or something like that. Like it even if you had a little bit of run out with a drill that size, I
they're not
wouldn't think it
tiny
would.
drills either. They're
Yeah.
like medium sized drills.
To be fair though, the Go drill is also not like super well suited to aluminum, so that could be the problem.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it works great on the way down, and then it was like talking to the Kennett Metal like tech support the other day, and they were like, "Yeah, you just gotta." They're like, "Well, the problem is you have to drop your RPM to 500 before you exit the hole." I'm like, okay,
Like or not. Yeah, or I'll just find a
that's
different drill. That's okay.
that doesn't sound right, but okay.
Yeah. No, I've had kind of hit and miss conversations with kind of metals tech. Like they've been great for speeds and feeds, but then like at work we had a drill. I was drilling over an inch deep with like a 100 something thou drill in some kind of 400 series cast steel, and I was like, "Oh, what should I
Oh,
peck at?" And they were
that
like,
sounds
"Oh, don't."
terrible.
They're like, "Don't peck," and I'm like, "No, I know I need to peck. Like I know that this is not going to work. You're wrong. I don't have through spindle. Like it's not going to make it 10xd without
Wait,
a
wait,
peck."
wait. They were saying without through spindle.
Yeah, yeah, it's a RoboMate, and I was like, no, it doesn't have through spindle. We didn't buy the through spindle drill, and they're like, yeah, but we don't recommend pecking, and they're like, like do it at your own risk kind of thing, and I was like, okay, I'll do it at my own risk then, sure.
That's like that's unreal right there.
Yeah, I was like, come on, guys, like you and I both know that I'm not going to get the 10xd with no coolant at the bottom of the hole and a cast stainless. Like it's not going to happen.
Just
So
one void in the casting away from exploded drill.
right, and this is on a machine with no tool setter or anything, and we were running a thread mill almost to depth afterwards, and just plunging in at like 100 inches a minute to the bottom of the hole to make this thing a little faster. And they were, I was like, I'm not gonna, again, process reliability, like I'm not gonna chance that this drill breaks off and then I blow up my $100 thread mill at the same time.
Exactly. Speaking of
So
thread milling, I thread milled my first hole in the Speedio like a week ago.
oh
Um,
right, yeah, how'd it
I
go?
did the went fine. It was just NPT thread milling.
Hmm.
I think for production of those parts, so that was for the first article. I gotta make 70 of them. Um, and so it's not a huge part quantity, but with the it's worth doing like the two major things that are the bottleneck of making them, which is it'd be really cool to get a little bit faster cycle by getting an NPT thread mill rather than just a generic thread mill. Um, and then just doing it with like a single pass around kind of thing.
Yeah,
Um, and then the other one is figuring out the mode A high accuracy code so I can surface a little bit faster.
yeah, we both need to get that sorted out. I've been talking about it forever, and you've actually put more work into it than I have already. So
My work was I put the code in there and it immediately didn't work. So I took it out and I ran the part anyways. It was it was just one of those situations where I put it in, I like ran the cycle. It was supposed to be roughing at like 180 inches a minute and the feed rate was locked at 39 inches a minute. And I was like, "Yep, that's not right. Not risking this."
Yeah, I'll put that stuff in maybe this weekend, and we can start chatting about it and get that thing sorted.
But yeah, I mean, it seems cool, and obviously there's that great white paper. I finally actually sat down and read through that whole thing, that Greg made. So I just need to kind of take Greg's advice and go through and take the table at the bottom and just compare it to the values that are in my control.
Oh, you didn't put those in?
My tech said that he put it in, but
Yeah, I would check that
yeah,
because yeah, if those aren't in there, then it's probably they're all probably locked at the bottom values. Because I know I'm fairly certain that all of my mode A stuff like isn't not filled out at all.
maybe what he did, maybe what my tech did is he put in the mode B stuff and not the mode A.
Right. Or he put
Um,
in the old mode A stuff.
yeah, something like that. But
But yeah, either way, I would double check that for sure.
that was a weird situation too, because that's not my. He wasn't actually my apps guy. He was like my apps guy for the day.
Oh, really?
Um, because my actual apps guy like ended up having like a family emergency and couldn't come out on the day of my installation.
Oh man.
And so they sent a different apps guy that morning. They like called me and they were like, "Is it still okay? We've got this other guy." I'm like, "I don't know the first guy, so um,
You
send."
could have not told me, and it would have been totally fine.
And it was like, "Just send as long as someone can show me the control, I'm good." Um,
Hmm.
so
Well, that's yeah. We'll both get that figured out pretty soon here, and make some videos and stuff. And because I usually just run with no high speed codes because I just don't want to deal with it, and like I just account for clipping in roughing toolpaths and things like that.
I haven't really honestly had any problems with it either. I leave like 20 thou stock to leave with the FCR, and I have not had any problems.
I've left 5 before and been totally fine.
I mean, a, it's not the most accurate machine I've ever touched in my life, kind of thing, by any
Right.
means, but it's good enough.
Yeah, yeah, for sure.
Just comp your tools before you start, and then comp them in when you need to, kind of thing.
Yeah, well, and really, I rarely have to comp tools unless it's something weird. Like good tooling seems to run pretty accurately.
So I was previously running my quarter-inch finisher in an ER collet,
Hmm.
and I would have to comp it every time. And I just put it in a shrink holder, and my comp is 0 now. It's actually negative 2/10, but that's within the tolerance of the end mill grind.
Right. Huh. That's pretty crazy.
Yeah, I still have to. I want to actually unshrink that tool and put in one of the Mari tool mirror line in that holder and see
Oh
how
yeah, I'm excited
that
to
works.
try mine.
I've got
I just
my
got
three
one
eighths
of
in
the
there.
3/8. Yeah, that's what I got is a 3 flute 3/8, and so I'm excited to try that out.
I've like been. This kind of goes to something I'll talk about a little bit later with one of the questions, but um, I've been hunting for an aluminum finishing tool,
Hmm.
and I've come out with 3 answers, and they're all correct. It seems so. Guess it's not that big of a deal when you have 16K RPM. You can get a pretty good finish with most tools. But like
Yeah,
the ones that I've been really tried were the YG1 out end mills that I normally used to run kind of thing everything as. Those work great. And then the Goering end mills. They make a nice aluminum one that's been running great. That's what I've got in there right now. And then that mirror line works fantastic as well.
yeah, yeah. You sent me the picture of the finish, and it was pretty spectacular.
Yeah, it chattered a little bit, which was interesting. So I want to find some time and call Frank about that a little bit. Like, it chatters on external corners.
Oh, that's bizarre.
It was super weird. And it's like just this very small amount of chatter. I didn't know. Obviously, I'm not doing anything different. Literally running the exact same feeds and speeds I normally do with other tools. And the chatter wasn't bad. It's like even with chatter, the finish looks fantastic, but you hear it squeak as it rounds a corner. and
Hmm.
then you can like see this tiny little surface variation. And so I have no idea what that's about.
Yeah,
And
that's a
it's
little
not
strange.
necessarily apples to apples because that tool is slightly longer flute length than the YG1 that I had in there.
It's a what, 1 inch length to cut?
It's a 1 inch, and I think I had like a 3/4 in there.
Okay. Yeah, I use a GWS Illumigator finisher, and like so far that's been my like go to for finishing. And mine's a 1 inch length of cut, so I'll be interested to kind of compare them next to each other.
Yeah, and I'm staring in front of me. The other one that I gotta still try is this Destiny Nyman back that I've got sitting on my desk right now.
I was
Um,
just talking with somebody about that the other day, and like I find the Illumigators to be freer cutting than the Diamondbacks, but the Diamondbacks are like way stronger. Like I find that if you do anything stupid at all, you can chip the corners on an Illumigator pretty easily.
okay.
But like I've thrown parts with a Diamondback, and the tool's just like, all right, give me another one. Like I don't care.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at their website, they're like with a 3/4 inch Diamondback, you can do an 1/8 inch per rev feed rate.
Yeah, yeah, they are nothing but powerhouses. So it like right now I'm using the Illumigator, and it's nice. Like it's so weird though. You like they talk about how amazingly you can ramp with it. But what they don't talk about is you have to ramp pretty aggressively with it, otherwise you get crazy chip recutting.
Interesting. Okay.
So like I don't have my default ramp value changed from the stock 2 or 3 degrees in Fusion. And so if I forget to change that, and you know, I have a 1 inch length of cut Illumigator. If I'm going, 750 deep or even 500 thou deep, maybe 200 or 300 thou into the helix, you can hear it just like recutting chips like
That
crazy.
grinding sound.
Yeah. And like, but if you increase that to 7, 8, 9, 10, it's like completely gone.
Interesting.
Yeah. So it really starts acting like a drill almost, and like really evacuating chips. And this is with, flood coolant on max. And yeah, it's kind of interesting.
Flood coolant on max on a Speedio is pretty lacking, so I don't know if you can say that.
I think it's pretty adequate. It's
I don't know.
not
I
like
mean, it's
the Kitty has more oomph as far as coolant goes, but it's not bad.
it's not too bad, but it's like it's when you start running through spindle, flood, and washdown, it just drops to zero.
Oh yeah, I don't run all of those at once. I'll run flood and through spindle together, but I rarely run wash down in a program.
I on some of these larger parts I've been running, if I don't run the washdown, everything just builds up in the enclosure really bad.
So the worst place on mine, and I'm wondering if it's the same on yours, is in the front left corner,
Front front right
like
corner is
behind the
mine.
door. Oh really?
Front right corner is right where that big lock line is.
Hmm.
Right behind that lock line is where mine builds up the worst.
Oh, that's so interesting. Because yeah, I don't get I get like some chips back there, but never that much. But the front left corner, I've even pointed some of the smaller lock lines from the wash down in that corner, and it still builds up there every single time, like up to the ceiling sometimes.
Interesting, because yeah, I mean that's where I actually ended up putting my OMI is over in that corner.
Oh, and
Um,
mine's on the right side,
yeah,
so I wonder if
I
that has something to do with it.
I don't know. But yeah,
Hmm.
so the those clamps you were running on the M140,
Oh yeah,
do
yeah, yeah.
you
Let's talk about those.
are you tilting your is it the B axis on the M140 or is the A axis?
It is A and C.
Okay. Yeah, because the trunnion it's like a spit roast across the x-axis, right?
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So everything I was doing on those clamps was 3 axis,
Okay.
because right now we don't have a 5 axis vise. We only have it's like a I don't think it's even a Kurt. It's probably like a knockoff import 4 inch vise, but it looks like a Kurt, shrunk down to 4 inches, and we have that on an adapter plate on a Lang. or on laying studs.
So, are you able to then lock the trunnion movement to prevent it from rotating in C once you've got that vise on there?
If by lock you mean you make sure that the code doesn't post out any C's, yeah.
Okay. I mean, that's that's a good answer, but it's also just one of those things. It's like it's like what we were talking about with the runner shaw probe, making sure you've got it as no spindle, no coolant kind of thing. It's
Right.
just an extra safety precaution that I guess is not there on that.
No, no. Well, I don't think that they really expect you to put things in there that shouldn't rotate. And when I designed the adapter to the 4-inch vise, it technically can rotate. It just gets like maybe under 100 thou from the trunnion, like the
Start
uprights on the
start
trunnion.
spinning it at 2,000 RPM.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. A little scary. So, no, the clamps for since nobody's really seen them, they are more or less inspired by the OK Vice from Mighty Byte, but Mighty Byte didn't make any single-sided ones, and I just needed to clamp one side of one part with each one of them, and so they have this angle in 3 axes that captures a little wedge that also has that ball milled into it. And I made them out of O1 and then press some pins in and use little screw or not screws, little springs to hold the face of them to each other. But yeah, it was just we have a few parts at work that we use it on, and we haven't used it on enough that it's always busy. And so I knew it was a spindle that was open and available, and I am very familiar with it, so I knew I could get up and running pretty quick.
And what do
And
you
it's
guys
a
use
probe
to
machine.
program at work?
HSM works.
Okay.
Yeah. We initially had feature cam, and I pushed very hard for the first year I was in engineering to get us away from that.
So HSM Works is pretty much just same thing as Fusion, because Fusion is HSM Express, right?
So HSM Express. I don't even know if HSM Express even exists, but HSM Express is the free version of HSM Works, so it still lives in SolidWorks.
Got it. Okay.
But it's only 2.5 axis, so you don't get any of the 3D adaptive or 3D toolpaths.
Makes sense.
But yeah, HSM Works is more or less Fusion. There are some things it does slightly better, and then there's a lot of things that are lacking now that Fusion has pulled a lot from Delcam and stuff. Like I wish we had some of the more advanced probing stuff. I wish we had toolpath editing like we do. Also, SolidWorks doesn't really play ball with Autodesk very well, and so there are some quirks that HSM Works has. Like if you hit Control Z after doing something in HSM Works, it undoes the last SolidWorks command, no matter what it was. So like you
Ooh,
can lose bodies or you can lose like sketches,
that sounds
things like that.
really sketchy.
Yeah, well, and it also means that there's no way to undo a HSM Works command. So like if you're editing toolpaths heavily, I usually duplicate them and edit them and then delete
S-
the old one.
So what's interesting is I don't think that that is unique to HSM Works, because if I recall correctly, that when I was running CamWorks at my last job, it did the same thing.
Yeah, it's terrible. It is like I'll hit Control Z absent-mindedly, and then all of a sudden have to like redo a whole bunch of work and like go back in and reapply whatever boss I was just creating last. Or I'll change a toolpath and be like, oh, I need to go back and I don't exactly remember my settings. No, I just have to hopefully close out and hopefully I saved it close or something like that. Like it just it's a nightmare sometimes, but it's still head and shoulders over feature cam, so I can't
Yeah,
complain.
I mean that's good. I mean, good cam software makes a huge difference.
Yeah, well, and we do all of our design in SolidWorks, and so having a non-integrated cam system just doesn't make really any sense anymore.
Yeah.
Like we in feature cam you would update your SolidWorks model and then you have to jump back into feature cam and re-import your new bodies, or it would prompt you and say, hey, this file has changed, you want to re-import it, and then sometimes you have to re-path your toolpath, which in feature cam is just it bothers me so much the way it works. Like you have to create chains from geometry and then use those chains in toolpaths, and they are like they're separate things you have to do.
That's wild.
Yeah, it
I've been
just.
playing a little bit with Sprute Cam recently,
Hmm.
and it's definitely a little bit of a learning curve, but it seems pretty all right so far.
Oh, really? What made
Um,
you start playing with that?
so my day job is the North American distributor for Sprute Cam,
Oh, okay.
and which is and so we do more than just the uh like three axis stuff for kind of our normal customers.
Hmm.
But we'll get into so Sprute Cam is like an alternative in my eyes to something like NX,
Oh, really?
where it's got full simulation, like full G code simulation,
Oh, wow, that's
and it
pretty
can
interesting.
handle up to I think like 12 axes or something like that.
Huh?
So
I
you
had no idea.
can. We've got a lot of customers who do like robot stuff with it,
Oh, cool.
and so I'm not anywhere close to that part yet, but the idea is that hopefully, if I get really comfortable with it, I can kind of start helping take over some of the tech support for it.
Yeah,
Um,
that totally makes sense.
but so I've been playing with that a little bit, and it's definitely a learning curve, but it's because it's a very different workflow kind of thing,
Oh, I'm
and
sure.
it's been over a year now since I've used a non-integrated cam software. Because the first two cam softwares I learned were both integrated.
Hmm.
And then when I went to school, we used Mastercam, which was not integrated, but also partially integrated. So halfway through the year, we did switch to like integrated Mastercam. Um,
Right.
but so Sprute Cam is definitely not integrated, so that's a little bit interesting.
It just drives me nuts, like not being able to hop into CAD real quick and like draw soft jaws or a fixture or something like that.
Well, that was always the interesting part to me with, or that's why part of why I really like the fact that Fusion's got assemblies built into the model
Hmm.
because with my last job with SolidWorks, if you since there's no difference between it would be creating another body kind of thing if you made soft jaws.
Right.
So we like didn't do that. We would draw a sketch and then you just figure out how to make a toolpath off of just a sketch, not
Hmm.
like an actual 3D model of the soft jaws.
Yeah. Well,
And
it's the
so
same thing with HSM Works. Like I have to, like even if I want to de-feature a body and then use that as my stock, I have to create a separate configuration for that for the de-featured body, and then I have to create an assembly with two copies of the same file in it at different configurations, and then start my cam from there.
yeah, and that's where like that was wild to me and I did not like that
Yeah,
coming from
it's not as
first cam
intuitive.
software I ever use is Fusion. And actually, I don't think it was Fusion. I think it was like SL Cam or something like that. It was like a router cam.
Oh, weird.
It was like it was some. It's like a free online one or something like that. It's super basic, but it was like when I was first building the mill with my dad, I like did not feel comfortable using Fusion, and the SL Cam was like click and draw rectangle. Now it will cut a rectangle kind of thing. It was like kindergarten cam practically.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense.
So,
Oh man. Yeah. Well, we've
but
got
that's
some
oh
questions if you want to jump into those.
yeah, let's do that.
Actually, we've got quite a few. So I already kind of uh, sent Emery a response to this one, but Emery Rempel had asked, let's see, he said, "How come in every other trade, cost overrun gets passed on to the customer? If I hire a contractor to do my bathroom, they'll quote 8K and be like, oh yeah, well it was hard, so it's 10K. Our industry is the only one where we have to live with the guest quotes and lose our shirts. Not that I want to change our industry, more that other trades should have to stand by their estimates." And
Yeah, I thought
so
that was an interesting question. I have no idea what the answer to that is.
So the answer I gave him, and I'm fairly certain this is accurate, is that it's the difference between an estimate and a quote, which there's like different legal definitions. Like a quote is like, this is what it costs to do this. Do you want to do it or not? And an estimate is like, this is what I think it's going to cost. There can be overages.
Interesting. Okay. I've never actually thought about that definition. I just thought they were synonymous always.
Yeah, because I looked it up recently. Um, yeah, like a quote is a and granted, I don't think that this is across the board. I'm sure states do it differently, but I think a quote is like a legally binding, like this is what the cost of the part is, whereas like an estimate is like a rough, this is what it might cost kind of thing. Yeah,
Yeah, I mean that's definitely an interesting kind of thing.
yeah.
That's actually a good explanation. I mean, that makes a lot of sense if that's kind of the truth.
I know for a fact, so I'm looking it up while we're talking about it. I know for a fact that in Australia that's the case because that's the first one that came up, and also in New
All
Zealand.
those listeners in Australia, now you know.
But I think it's also the same here. But again, I'm sure it probably depends state to state too.
Um,
So yeah, that's I think what it comes down to, and I'm sure our listeners are great about correcting me when I'm wrong. So if I am wrong and you know better, please do reach out and I'll correct myself next episode.
machining lawyer.
That's what I need.
Um, very specific section of law. Only can help Prodium with his questions on the podcast.
Yep. Yep.
Um, cool. So we got Sequoia Manufacturing, and he's asking about Airtable and Zapier. I'm just starting to kind of dive into the Zapier side, and I'm a little bit frustrated with a couple things, but I'm probably just doing dumb things with it. But Airtable been diving into a little bit, and that's been really cool. I've got like a machine schedule that I'm really trying to refine down. That like kind of has a different things where I put all of my open orders in there, and then as they like kind of go through it, they go up on a job board. There's like a separate view that goes onto my job board. That is been really nice to have just a visual representation. You can kind of just glance up at any of the stations in the shop and look at the kind of job board and just see where jobs are at. What I've been working on in Zapier is I want it to be set up with a Google form,
Hmm.
um, because that way I can create job travelers and then get a like cheap barcode scanner that just does like USB text kind of input type deal.
Well, I
As
mean,
you
yeah,
click
all
into the
part gunners are just USB input.
yeah, so you just like click into the box in the Google form, scan the barcode, and then you enter like how many parts you made that day, and then it will input that into my machine schedule, subtract that from the total, and then it will change it from op 1 to op 2 kind of thing once the quantity is met.
So I think you can do a lot of that with just Airtable. I know you can do forms with Airtable
Okay. I actually haven't tried that, so
because
that's
Jake's helped me out, and he has like a purchasing form that he can access, and you just fill in like I need this tool, I need to order from here. Here's the date I need it by. Checkbox for like different things, and then it can populate into a record.
yeah. First off, shout out to Jake on that one too, because my machine schedule is based off of Jake's.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
Jake
He did
sent me
all
his
of
like
those stuff.
job board, and
Right.
then
Yeah.
I modified it to where it's at right now. So no, I mean it's been interesting, and I've set up some automations like when it gets within 5 days of the due date, kind of thing. It will automatically flag it as a higher priority job. Um, and then like if it goes over, it does overdue. And I've been trying to get that one to work, but I don't think that one works yet. But again, that's just Airtable diving in a little bit deeper and more the time aspect of it. So
Yeah. Yeah. It is a deep pool to dive into. Like there, every time I'm like, oh man, I got this on lock, and then I find a video or a blog post from somebody, and they're like, oh, there's this way to do it 10 times better. It's like, oh, okay, I'll go redo this.
yeah, what have you been kind of primarily using yours for?
Right now, I just have it creating a job board, and the job board's auto-populated from accepted quotes in Zero.
That's way more advanced than mine, but that's
It's
cool.
literally just a zap. It's like if this then that kind of thing. It's super super easy, and it's not fully fleshed out quite yet. Like I'm some of the things that I'd like it to have. Like right now, it doesn't have a due date because my due dates I put in the note on my quotes, and they're always like 2 weeks ARO or something like that. And so what I need to do is I need to figure out a place to put a due date or a delivery date, and then or even have 2 weeks and then have it do the math and then put that in the due date file. And I'm sure I can do it with Zapier. I just haven't quite figured it out yet. And like I said with Jake last week, I haven't been giving it any attention really. Like right now, my job board computer is completely off. I don't know if you heard last week's episode, but like it just
Yeah.
runs the fan 100% of the time, and so I need to probably get a Pi or something in there.
Get one of the see if there's a Black Friday deal on the same little computer that I got.
Oh, that's a good idea.
Because that I got that was on like Amazon Prime Day. It was like a really cheap. It was like $80 or something for the computer.
Oh yeah, that's
Um,
not bad at all.
and it comes with Windows on it already.
Oh,
Um,
nice.
so
That's the. I mean, you would spend $80 on Windows, so that's
for
pretty nice.
sure. So that was a good deal. So that's what I've got mine running on. Um, the one thing I've been like trying to figure out how to do, it's like a really stupid thing, is auto refresh on my job board, because my job board is a view from Airtable,
Hmm.
and so it's one of those things where you get like a shareable link for a view. So I'm not actually logged into Airtable on that computer. It's just like
Oh,
a it's
okay.
like a shareable view. That way, it's like I can go into full screen and it only shows the information I want, kind of thing.
I gotcha.
And the problem with it is when I change things on my like computer in my office, it doesn't auto update on the board until you refresh the page.
Hmm.
And I looked into like getting just like a Chrome extension for auto refresh, but if you like take 2 seconds and read all the Chrome extension reviews, they're like, do not install, this is malware. Like, this will sell all of your information to corporations. And I'm
Wow.
like, yeah, I'm not going to install one of these. So,
Yeah, it sounds like Chrome needs to do a little bit more reading of the reviews and more policing of their app store. Then that's terrible.
yeah, all of them were just had some super sketchy reviews. And I was like, that's a hard pass for me. And all the reviews were just so funny too, because they were like, they sold my data to the government. If you read the terms and services, it is so bad. They come to take your firstborn child. They're like, but it did auto refresh, so that's good.
So, I don't know if you saw Kyle was playing around with Auto Hotkey today
Uh,
on Discord.
yeah, I saw that. I think
So
like
you,
he was like making an auto hotkey to rickroll himself. I think.
yeah, 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 yeah. But besides things like that, there's also like really good uses for it. So you might be able to hook it up to where you just hit spacebar to refresh the page, or even
I
a
mean, there's
timer.
already a hotkey for refreshing. Just
Okay, well there you go.
F5.
But you might even be able to just link it to a timer and
Oh,
just have
okay,
it
yeah.
auto
Because
refresh.
that's my idea. Is I just want it on a timer. Because right now I've got like a little wireless keyboard with a trackpad on it, and every once in a while I just like hit F5 and it refreshes. But
Oh yeah, I just looked it up. There's a set timer code in Auto Hotkey, so I'm sure you could link it to a timer.
yeah, no. I mean, I don't know specifically what Sequoia. I mean, I've been avoiding Sequoia's questions for the past like 2 weeks because I don't know enough to answer them. Because when I first like put up my job board, he was like, "Hey, tell me more about Airtable," and I'm like, "I just opened Airtable like 20 minutes ago." So
It's pretty cool, but yeah, I don't know. I know almost nothing. Like I know I looked into it just enough to get a job board running, and to have like when I complete a job for it to move off my active view, and that's about it. I have a tooling ordering thing sort of up and running, but it doesn't quite work. Uh, yeah, it's so powerful, but I need just like maybe a week to dive into it and really dig into it and get it done.
exactly. So I my statement still stands, is that I'll make a post once I feel comfortable and I've got the system working. And I'm happy to make a shared version of the my machine schedule and everything like that if anyone is interested. And that way, because I think you can create a copy of the base with no data. So I'll just export it without any of my customer data in there, and people are more than welcome to take a look at some point. Obviously, I want to get it working a little bit more than bare minimum at that point, but
Yeah. 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 Foot Pedal Jones asked, "Could you guys talk about the process of finding an industrial space for a shop? Based on what I can see online in my area, there are 10 times the amount of 50,000 square foot shops as 2,000 square foot shops."
so I don't. The answer to that question is it is very challenging. Um, at least here for sure. I mean, I've got the same situation when I was first. I I bought my first machine before having space for it,
Hey, me too.
um, and I like asked the machine tool dealer, like, can you hold it? And so then I was like looking around and I was trying to find it, and finding I 2,000 square feet was even too big for me at that point. I was like, wow, that is expensive. Um, and looking back on it, it's kind of funny now, having with the 2,000, almost 400 square feet I've got now. I can't imagine having 600 square feet like I did. Or even my next shop where I downsized by half, kind of thing. But yeah, I mean, it's Craigslist was
Yep,
what I did.
that's where I found mine too. That's where I.
Craigslist, and have a mom who's willing to look on Craigslist for you as well. Um,
Yeah, yeah. Having somebody who's not actively working looking for you is really helpful.
exactly. Um, and then my next two shops are just word of mouth kind of thing, so that doesn't count. Um, it was like my current shop is in the same building as my previous employer, so I was in here. I met the landlord of the building, and he said, "Hey, I'll get you a better space in this building," and that's where I got my last shop. And then they renovated half the building, and he said, "You want first dibs on one of the new shops." So that doesn't really count as hunting for a shop or anything. But yeah, I mean, it takes a lot, and the important one, and it's also hard to find like a 2,000 square foot shop with three phase kind of thing, and like a bathroom and everything like that.
And zoned right. There was one that I was looking at that I was so praying I could like squeeze in under the zoning. It was like not commercial one or whatever. It was research and development or something like that. And I was talking to a good friend of my fiance, and he's a city planner. And I was like, "Hey, like, what do you think about me trying to get this shop and make it work?" And he was like, "I think that you will screw
Get
yourself
fined.
over if you do that." Yeah, but it was perfect. It was like an X-ray place, like portable X-ray building,
Oh yeah,
and so they had I think 300 or 400 amps of three phase and a conference room and
that would have been
two.
awesome.
Well, and it was like a nice location, unlike all of the rest of the industrial space around here.
Your shop's not in a terrible location, if I remember correctly. It's like off of a
Eh,
pretty good main road and everything.
it's off of a main road, but like as far as crime and like things like that, it's not in a great side of town. Like we have
Oh, okay.
recently had to change the bath, or like the landlord changed the bathroom locks because we had homeless people living out of the women's bathroom.
Oh, yikes. Okay.
Yeah. So like, it's industrial area for sure. But yeah, I can only echo what you said. Like it's Craigslist is a great place to look for it. You can find like one of the bigger commercial real estate companies in town here owns, I don't know, 40% of the buildings. So you can get in contact with somebody like that and just see what they have. Uh, but yeah, it's not easy, especially when you're looking for a smaller shop. Like people I would try to find a block of multiple units, like the one that I have. There's a few others in my
That's
town where,
exactly what my first shop was too. It was like a storage facility that
yeah,
built a bunch of slightly larger storage units with power in them.
exactly, yeah, yeah. It's not ideal, but it is way cheaper and it'll get you by and get you started.
Exactly. I know. I was kind of thinking about it as like most likely. I'm thinking my next shop I'll probably just build. Um, at this point, I think I can hold my own in this shop for long enough that I can end up affording just to build a building, like a pole barn kind of thing.
Hmm. Yeah, I totally agree. You've got a ton of room in there.
So
So the next one was from Precision Instrument Repair, and they just said flatness and parallelism, and I said anything specific about it because I was like, oh, I can talk about like how to measure flatness and parallelism. And what he responded was, I guess when it comes to our type of work, we usually deal with anvils. No matter how flat, pretty, and shiny you get them, they're useless if they're not completely parallel. But then again, when it comes to parallelism, we try to aim for about 20 millionths or less. And I was like, okay, this is way out of my league of
oh, for
parallelism.
sure. I've got like a maybe calibrated 10 years ago surface plate. Like I have no ability to even come close to that level of checking flatness and parallelism. I'm assuming they're talking on like lapping micrometer anvils.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
At first, I didn't read their name, and I heard anvil, and I was like, "Why would a blacksmith give a shit about parallelism?" And then, like,
Exactly. No, I'm just like picturing, I don't know if you follow like Alex Steele.
yeah, that's
Just
exactly what I
his
picked.
new anvils. I'm like picturing him just sitting there with like a scraping that in flat first and then coming back and lapping it and
Yeah, that's exactly where my mind went. And then I reread it, and I was like, "Oh, okay. They repair instruments. They're talking about mics. Okay, that makes more sense." So,
that would have been probably a much better question for Robin, but Robin would have had some great insight to that.
100%, yeah. And I wrote back. He never got back to me. I think they probably went home for the day. But I was like, "Oh, are you using optical flats?" Because my guess is that I don't know how else you'd measure parallelism under 20 millionths.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah.
Maybe it's one of those things where at that point you're checking it by feel
Yeah. I have
against like a
no idea.
master or something.
It's bizarre. He said under 20 millionths if they're talking super mics too. So 20 millionths is like a standard mic.
That's wild.
um, so our buddy Drew, Drew Fab asked, what are your thoughts on reusing packing materials as long as they're not branded stuff, such like McMaster car boxes, etc.?
So I think that's a really interesting question. And I've, for a long time, did not buy packing paper.
Hmm.
I try not to use any plastic in my packaging. The only plastic I think I use are like Ziploc bags every once in a while.
Okay.
Figuring people can reuse those. Um, but I like for a long time, for a solid like 2 years, I never bought packing paper. And what I'd do is I'd save all the stuff from McMaster and I'd use that in like packaging customer orders and things like that. But it got to a point where storing that amount of paper became more of a nightmare than it was worth.
Hmm.
And so now I do just keep a roll of the packing paper. But in terms of like boxes and things, it really depends on the part, the customer, etc. I mean, it's if it's you're just shipping to a heat treater or whatever, they're going to destroy the box anyways, so might as well just use a kind of generic box kind of thing, just like a McMaster box or whatever. But if it's to one of my like job shop customers or to one of my like product customers, I always use kind of branded packaging and I've got like a very systematic way that I pack my orders. So it's tough for me to make the decision kind of thing to use someone else's packaging if it's not quite the right same size box and everything and things like that. But
Yeah, I'm along those same lines. I keep a little bit of used paper on hand. like 1 or 2 boxes worth, like whatever, the most recent McMaster or MSC order has come in. I'll keep that because I know I'll use it, but I don't keep a lot on hand. I have a roll of the paper as well. We use a lot of bubble wrap and Ziploc bags because a few of our customers require bag and tag, and then the bubble wraps like a holdover from when we were doing a lot of work for Xometry. And like they have a very specific way that they ask you to wrap everything.
Got it.
Uh, but like boxes, I'm the same way. Well, it depends. Like I've got a few local customers that I drop off parts in person, and like for them, I'll just use a whatever box is available. But all the stuff I ship, or I don't know, 90% of the stuff we ship is through FedEx, and usually it's overnight or something like that. And so I usually end up just using a express box.
Yeah, no, and I mean, packaging is a huge deal for me, especially. I mean, again, going a little bit back to the goal kind of thing is my big Herbie in my shop right now is packaging. Um,
Yeah, especially
it
at the
is
quantities you've been making.
it is nuts. I spend 2-3 hours just packaging parts, another like 2-3 hours cleaning parts, kind of thing. It's it, and then the customer parts that I've been packaging in large quantities again are the no scratch, no dent, and so I've been battling with UPS on their seemingly endless ability to destroy parts. Um, and just finding the right way to pack them, and it's really one of those things where used packaging is great on some things, but when I need to standardize for quantities of close to thousands of parts kind of thing, it's just nice to know exactly how many parts fit into rows inside of a box and everything like that ahead of time.
So would that be worth getting a cheap laser or something and custom cutting foam for that kind of stuff?
So I've got a laser. Uh, I've actually got a CO2 laser. Um, I don't necessarily want to. So I've been kind of discussing that a little bit with my customer and just figuring out how we want to package these. Um, because part of the problem with laser cutting and kind of I actually was just emailing them today about this is again then they have to keep an inventory of my packaging and send it back to me or get rid of it.
Hmm.
And so the current way I'm packaging them is in these little foam sleeves from Uline. Um, that should be enough to protect the parts, but apparently it's not. And so what I'm thinking of doing and what I did one kind of test batch on a recent um, set of parts I actually sent them that were rework, like not necessarily rework, but remake because they actually did get damaged.
Hmm.
And I was remaking them. And when I shipped them out, I actually put individual custom cut cardboard dividers between the parts,
Oh, nice. That's smart.
like interlacing kind of. And so my idea is I'll just make like a standard template of that and then laser cut a bunch of those out from cardboard sheet stock.
Yeah, that's really
But
smart.
yeah, I mean it's packaging is definitely a interesting game, and it's especially when it's going completely clear across the country kind of thing on parts that need to be very nice looking and cosmetic kind of thing.
Hmm. Oh, I know. I've had thankfully only one order, knock on wood, so far that has been damaged in transit. But like there is nothing worse than doing everything right on your side and then having the shipper drop the ball and damage your parts.
Yeah, for sure. And it's like the first maybe time or two that this happened with this customer, it was for sure my fault of like putting the parts in the foam sleeves, figuring that the foam sleeves would be enough to protect them, and then putting all of those in a like just in a Ziploc bag kind of thing,
Hmm.
and then that in a box. And that was enough where the parts are all at different angles in the box where they can then bump into each other through the foam sleeves. And that was a cause for some of it. So then I changed up the packaging and spent a whole bunch of extra time like figuring out how to put the parts into the boxes and ended up with similar results, unfortunately. So it's still just nailing down that process kind of thing.
Yeah. Well, I wonder if you could reach out to a box supplier too and just get custom small boxes made, or like cardboard sleeves, so that you don't have to make them.
Yeah, that might actually be worth doing.
Yeah, because you're doing quantities where I'm sure they could do them for under $1 a piece, kind of thing,
For
significantly
sure.
under $1. Yeah. So, all right. Well, White Weasel asked two questions. First one was, any chance we could do a podcast with good machinist Black Friday deals and coupons? And we were talking about this beforehand. So far, I haven't seen a whole bunch, but the one that both East and I were talking about just before this started is Haas has like some crazy deals right now. Uh, Things are 35 to 75% off, I think.
I'm just
20.
waiting for Haas to get some BT30 stuff in there.
Yeah, same. But
I
my
mean, they've got the
biggest
DT.
problem, well, my biggest problem is they won't have any dual contact though, and like
You
that's
and
not a
your
problem
dual
for you.
contact bullshit.
Yeah, it's fantastic, and I'm gonna stick with it.
I'm just jealous.
I know. Uh,
And I've also been buying mostly dual contact holders, so
oh, that's right, because you can run them anyway, and you'll
yeah,
eventually get your BBT spindle, so you might as
exactly.
well. So yeah, that's so far the biggest, like, of every like type of tooling. Haas has like 40% off holders, 75% off like indexable stuff. I haven't used any of it. Easton, you've got a face mill that you haven't used, but a few people on the Discord have used the face mill that they bought, and they seem to really like it.
Their
Uh,
indexable drills, I'm guessing, are pretty nice because it's the same indexable drill that I've got from Kennametal. Like
oh right,
you can see the machining marks on the drill, and it's the exact same drill. Because I think both Haas and Kennametal are buying those drill bodies from Whittia.
okay,
So
yeah. Carbide drills are 50% off. I think they're all Chinese, but I can't remember. But even then, they seem like they're decent quality. Let's see, where does it say? Oh no, they're from Korea, which would make them what, YG?
yeah, probably YG Dream drills.
Yeah. Uh so that's worth looking. And then I also reached out to Eric at Orange Vice, and we got a special coupon code for you. If you guys do WT all caps, you get 20% off, and that runs through the 30th. So that was pretty cool. I'm actually probably going to use that. So
For sure. I think I need probably some more vice jaws and things like that for my new orange vices. So
yeah, yeah, so that's effective now through the 30th. Again, coupon code WT, both caps, for 20% off on Orange. Um, I didn't see much else. Like, I think that some places are kind of holding off until actual Black Friday. Because, like, when I was looking for deals today, I found a lot of like articles or articles and pages from different suppliers for last year's stuff or 2 years ago stuff. So definitely keep your eyes posted or peeled, and I'll post on the With Intolerance Instagram if I find anything excellent. I'll put it in our stories, and maybe save the stories.
the funny thing is too is Friday is my tooling purchasing day. So I usually buy most of my tooling on Fridays. So that'll work out well this week.
Yes, it will. Yeah, I think I might get some of these Haas carbide drills to try out, and then we'll see what else I get. So far, nothing else has really stuck out to me, and I'll definitely get some stuff from Orange. I want to get some soft jaws for the deltas, um, and then I might get another set, or the A set or B set of the outside jaws too for the other one.
And then the other one from White Weasel, I just added that one because I saw you put that on my one of my posts for the Sandvik 590. It's the adjustable insert face mill from Sandvik. Sometimes people call it the Century Mill. I don't know if that's a legacy name or if that's still what they call it. But it's got these grooved inserts and then these pockets, and it's not easy, but it's not too bad. Like Greg from Luma Labs makes it out to be. Um,
Well, and
it's
Pete was having some issues with his too.
Yeah, no, I mean it's just what I do is I start with like a 5/10 indicator and I just barely preload it and then I touch each insert and I just get them all as close as I can, and you just um it might take having to reseat some of the inserts a couple times, but once you get them all within like 5/10 kind of thing, then I just drop down to a tenths indicator and I keep kind of going on the process. Um, and then I at the end I then go back and I set my wiper like a thou lower, or sorry, 5/10 lower kind of thing than my other inserts. And I've never gotten great data on whether or not how far down you should be on that wiper, but I've been having pretty good results with the 5/10 down, 5/10 lower kind of thing. But
Yeah, you've got some amazing surface finishes from that.
I think I chipped out the insert before I ever got to use it in the Speedio, because I was running it under the recommended SFM, um, which I'm still running it under the recommended SFM, but I was running it even lower.
Do you even have enough RPM to run it at recommended speeds and feeds?
It's like 28,000 or 30,000 RPM.
Yeah, yeah.
So no, but I was running it at 8, and at 8,000 RPM, it leaves these gigantic gouge marks in your part.
Jeez.
It's disgusting. It's like one of the worst face mills for aluminum if you can't get it up fast enough. But it's been running really well in the Speedio, but I just think I need a new insert. Um,
Jeez, that's nuts. Yeah, it sounds like it's very picky, but like if you get it right, you really get it right.
yeah, for sure. I guess the next one is from, I'm gonna butcher this, Mortz, maybe
Or
Mo.
Moritz,
Yeah,
maybe. I don't know.
I'm gonna butcher that, but you
I'm
know who
glad I'm
you
not the
are.
only one butchering
Um,
names.
the we've talked about this a little bit, but the problems with tooling on the lathe. Um, I haven't had too many problems. Again, just as much as I knock on the Sandvik people for buying nothing but Sandvik, I buy nothing but Iskar, so I haven't had any problems.
Oh,
Um,
but speaking of lathe tooling, you posted an interesting picture today in the Discord.
the Capto.
Yeah. So
Yeah,
what? Where are you going with that?
um, so Steel Phil, um, got me on this whole Capto research thing. So going back to the question you normally ask, the what did you research, is the I dove pretty deep into Capto and just finding out what options there are for Capto. It turns out you can get a Capto block for my lathe, like the Capto receiver,
Which is insane because it's a 20-year-old lathe.
35-year-old lathe.
It's a 35-year-old lathe. That's
Yeah,
insane.
no, it's absolutely crazy. It is. I was not expecting that because I called Sandvik because I was like, "Hey, can I get a rebuild kit for a Capto holder block?" And then I was planning on just sinking that into like a homemade block. So I've got a quote, an RFQ out to Sandvik to get one of those blocks. But in the meantime, I picked up a couple like new old stock. So the one I posted on the Discord is a Seco WNMG holder.
Okay.
Um, and because WNMG is what I primarily use for turning. So
Well, and Seiko's owned by Iskar too, so you're keeping on brand.
I didn't even realize that. That's funny.
I think they are.
Oh,
I'm pretty sure.
but yeah, I mean, uh, I was much more relieved when I found out you could actually get ISCAR grooving tools in Capto, because Sandvik's turning stuff's all right. I've just really never been a fan of their Q cut stuff, like their parting inserts.
Hmm.
I actually started with a Sandvik parting tool and then switched to ISCAR. And the ISCAR parting tools, as I was talking earlier, are just awesome. And so that was my only like big thing of like, I don't know about Capto because I can't really get ISCAR grooving stuff. Turns out ISCAR makes Capto stuff. They just don't call it Capto.
They call
They
it
call it
Trilove
like
or something.
uh, they call it Cam Fix. That's what it's
Ugh.
called.
Oh, I
But
looked it
it's
up real quick. Seiko, I was wrong. They're part of Sandvik. That was
oh,
the
okay.
relationship I was thinking of.
but yeah, I mean, it's ISCAR calls it Camfix C4,
Oh,
and
okay.
I was like, but they luckily do list it as ISO 266 231 standard. And then it took me a little bit to dig up whether or not that's for sure the standard that Sandvik created. But that is, so ISCAR does make their grooving tools in Capto, and they make all sorts of other stuff in Capto as well. But um,
I
as
would
long as
think it
it's
would
a
be so silly for them to not make Capto stuff.
for sure. I mean, there's machines out there. I know Frank from Mari Tool has that Doosan mill turn that they make like their 40 taper holders on.
Hmm.
And I think that one's a Capto spindle, so having to only buy from Sandvik would really suck.
Oh yeah, totally. Uh,
So,
yeah. So Justin, the cogwheel, asked 5 reasons why you're a Miano fanboy,
um, let's see. Thermal stability. That's one.
and they're thermally stable because the coolant tank is integral to the casting, and so everything is more or less the same temp all the time.
That and they preload their ball screws.
Okay.
They stretch their ball screws. They're pinned between two sets of angular contact bearings on either side of the ball screw.
Oh,
Um,
interesting.
and they're stretching them. So as it heats up, the ball screw relaxes, and you keep the same tolerance.
Hmm.
Um, which goes to my second point, which is just from a process reliability standpoint, they're fantastic because I I was saying earlier on those 700 some parts I made, um, I didn't change an insert once and I didn't change an offset.
Jeez,
And
that's
that
nuts.
wasn't like running for one day kind of thing. That was running over a whole week where I'd turn off and on and off and on and off and on and off the lathe. And I never changed a tolerance. I think my average deviation was maybe 8/10,
That's so good.
maybe. I mean, there were days where it would change by 1/10 between power on and power off kind of thing.
That
But
is just so good.
it was, and so that's, I guess that's two. They're fast. My turret, uh, my turret tool change time is faster than a Speedio by about 50%.
What?
Uh, Between two turret positions, so if I put all my tools in order, my tool change time is 0.3 seconds. It's just like this
Wow.
hydro. It doesn't even have to unclamp. It's just a hydraulically actuated turret. They're
Oh
like,
wow. Okay,
it doesn't unclamp. It just rotates. It just goes.
that's
Um,
cool.
it's super cool.
So if you
Um,
are not doing 2 consecutive stations, does it still stop at each station?
it does.
Okay.
So that's where it can add up. But that goes back to kind of my thing we were talking about last night of tool libraries. That's kind of where I got the idea from it from. Is I put my tools in my lathe turret in terms of order of operations. So like parting tool is tool one because by the time you wrap all the way around the turret, it'll stop on that tool kind of thing.
Hmm.
So that's my idea with that. But yeah, it's fast, it's accurate, it's thermally stable. It's super rigid. My tiny little lathe, I've taken a 5/16 depth of cut with a W&MG insert.
Wow.
So that's yeah, that's a lot off the OD.
Yeah.
I'm not thinking right now, so I can't.
5/8.
Yeah, it's 5/8.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's
5/8 off the
insane.
OD in one pass.
Yeah. That's nuts.
It's crazy. It can just do that all day long. And that was at like 8 thou feed per rev.
Oh man,
Yeah,
that
no,
sounds scary.
it's awesome, and I've got this ISCAR insert drill that I've been just plowing through stainless with. I'm drilling like a 2-inch deep hole in stainless at like 812 diameter. Um,
Oh yeah, you sent me that. That looks so scary. Like,
And I don't have through spindle coolant, so I guess that's one in the negative section for my lathe, but that's not overall for Miyano. They just chose not to put that on my lathe, which is quite frustrating.
yeah, I bet.
And then one more thing to say, they've got some cool M codes on even on my old Miyano. They've got an M code that'll start the coolant, the spindle, and tool change to the first tool of the program
Really?
with like one M code, I think.
Oh,
So
that's
it's kind
cool.
of like the G100 tool changes on the Speedio.
That's exactly what I was thinking of. Yeah.
And so that's pretty cool. And then like obviously on the modern Mianos, you got like the super the super turn, or what do they call it?
Superimposed turning.
Yeah, the superimposed turning, where you can turn on two spindles with one turret. Like you can be threading on one and turning on the other with one single turret.
Yeah, it looks fake almost, like watching that happen. It's so cool.
And the coolest part about that is my understanding from talking to like my citizen dealer, that's not like something you have to post out of a spree. That's like just flat out you turn on an M code and then it starts following.
Right, right. Yeah, you post normal code and then it takes care of it from what it sounds like.
Yeah, and so I mentioned earlier in the podcast my next machine is going to be a lathe. My next machine is going to be a Miyano lathe. Um,
That's
they're not
exciting.
cheap, but that's going to happen. So
Yeah, well, I mean, you've been doing heaps more lathe work than mill work.
yeah, and the scary part is that before I got the Speedio, I was still planning on doing the mill work that I've been doing in the Tormach, and just without a tool changer, and it's like 4 tools on 700 parts.
Oh man, you never would have made it.
That would have been so bad.
Like you would be up for 22 hours a day.
That that would have been really bad.
Yeah.
It ended up being like a 15-second cycle time per part in the Speedio. Um, just across, I'd have like 20 parts in this Speedio kind of thing at once. And then it just went through them, but it was, yeah, that would have been nuts.
Yeah, you would have had quadruple that just in tool change times.
Yeah. I mean, I can do a really fast tool change in the Tormach, but that requires me standing right there.
Right, right. And you've got lathes to run and parts to ship and all that stuff. So yeah, you definitely bought at the right time.
Um, we got a joke question from Ian, and I'll just take a little bit of liberty on that to say that slitting saws on the Speedio, that's been fun. I've got
Yeah,
that.
so you've got an insane death cutter from Sandvik.
I couldn't find a Sandvik one at a reasonable price, so I ended up with a Kennametal one.
Oh, right.
Um,
Okay. Yeah. But it,
so
it looks like a weapon, not a tool. Um,
it's, well, that's part of what makes that thing so much less scary to use than a normal slitting saw. Is instead of having like 30 tiny little teeth that can break off, or get packed full of chips, this thing's only got 6 flutes. It uses these like parting inserts, and you can run it up to like 4,000 RPM.
yeah. You're not making me feel warm and fuzzy about it still. So what diameter and what thickness is it? And then what are
It's
your speeds and feeds that you're using on it?
I'd have, oh, let me pull up Infusion actually. I don't know what feeds and speeds I've been running with it. I do not remember.
But what
There was one of
diameter is
those
it?
things where I phoned a friend on that one. I called my apps guy and I said, what can I run in the Speedio for this? Um, but it's a 3-inch diameter, 1/8 inch thick slitting saw. Um, and I am currently running 1,400 RPM.
Okay. That's a little
So
less scary. That's not
it's a little bit
4K.
less scary. And I'm feeding at 2,000 feed per tooth.
Okay, which comes out to what?
Like 20 inches a minute, I think.
Okay, that's not terribly scary then.
It's not that bad. I was
But
expecting a lot worse, and I think it can go a lot worse.
yeah, but and you're using this on your tool tightening fixtures?
I haven't yet.
Okay. What
That's
did you use
the
it on so far? Just customer parts?
Yeah, I've been using it on these customer parts. I actually think you quoted these parts. Um, they were like these
Oh,
discs with
uh-huh.
this side like window where an
Yep.
engraving goes.
Yep,
So I
yep,
was
yep.
using this thing to slit out that little slot on the side, and it was pretty fast, and it left a really awesome finish on that sidewall, and it worked really well. So I've got that mounted in the Speedio. So as soon as I stomach doing that tapping on those parts, those will go in there. And then that's the same operation that it goes through the part with. Um,
Nice. I think you'll be all right with the tapping.
yeah, and part of what's also nice about this thing is it feels rigid enough that I don't feel the need to do like a conventional cut with it. I've
Oh,
been
wow.
climb
Okay.
cut. I've been climb
Nice.
cutting with it, and it sounds great.
Oh, so real quick, going back to that tapping too, you can peck tap on the Speedio,
Isn't that a great way to like make your threads out of tolerance though?
not on a Speedio. And definitely with a cut tap. I think you'd be totally fine.
Okay, cool.
I mean, if it doesn't work, like,
Yeah, I haven't even tried. Does that post out with the standard post?
I doubt it. I haven't tried it, but I know that there's a lot of funky things with the Speedio post. Like it works with
Okay.
standard drilling
So do not
cycles.
just select Peck Tap Infusion and send it.
No, compare what comes out to the programming manual. Because I know I can't remember who I was talking to, but somebody tried to do a left hand tapping and it posted out the wrong code and just tried to like drill with a left hand tap and broke it off, and it was
Oof.
like an expensive left hand form tap.
Oof.
So yeah,
Yeah.
definitely check it against the programming manual. But like I've done like the I know for a fact the drilling cycle that's like a peck reduction cycle doesn't work out of Fusion.
Okay.
But I hand coded that one and it works fine in the control. So I would think if any machine could peck tap successfully and make good threads, it would be a Speedio.
I'm gonna do a quick anti shout out to the whole Instagram community for the Speedio post because there are so many Instagram people using Fusion and a Speedio, and there are still problems with the post. That seems unacceptable.
Yeah, well, I think that Autodesk has taken less from the community once they went like when I first started using Fusion, you could contact the post team directly and
Oh
be
no,
like,
I
"Can you
wasn't
make
talking
these?"
about Autodesk. I mean, I understand that they want
Oh, you're
nothing to
just
do
saying
with it.
somebody should
I'm
have
saying
better post.
somebody should
Okay.
have all of these minor bugs should have been found by now, and then people make post modifications, and then we have one master post or something, kind of like the master list for the TSC.
Something tells me that there are some good posts floating around there. Um, but yeah, nobody's like come out and been like I think that every like personally, if I came out with a really good post, like I might share it with close friends, but like I wouldn't want to just hand it out to everybody because it's such like a risk.
That's true. No, I totally get that. I mean, that was the same thing I've got. I made a very special post to be able to post Fusion code out for my lathe, and I've shared it with a couple people, but it's not something I'm planning on just handing out because there are definitely bugs in it that I found.
Speaking of fusion posts for your lathe, can you were talking about chip control, can you peck turn?
So that was those like 3 foot long chips were from peck turning.
Oh wow.
Yeah,
Okay, well it sounds
that
like you
was a
found a good
pecking
spot
distance
for
of 60 thou. So every 60 thou it would break.
that. Ooh.
Yeah, it was bad.
Okay, never mind.
And that was like feeding at like 12 thou feed per rev and taking like a 5/16 depth of cut.
Wow. Okay.
I like just you cannot break aluminum chips unless you have the SFM for it,
Yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense.
which really
Unfortunate.
sucks.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like you found a good way to do it though. So I'm glad you did that at least.
So,
All right.
next question is, what mouse do we use?
I don't use anything special. I think it's the Logitech Marathon M205.
Okay.
Uh, it's just a
Is it like
wireless.
a just a standard mouse, or is it just like one of those ergonomic ones, or
It's just a standard one. They're like super cheap. They're $20 at Costco, and the batteries last for absolutely ever. Oh, it's the M705.
okay?
And they're decent. They've got a scroll wheel. They've got the cool scroll wheel that Logitech has, where like you can do scrolling where it has detents every so often, or you can click a button and disable the detent and just like fast scroll.
The first time I used one of those where it was in the fast scroll mode, I was like, who the hell doesn't put detents in their scroll wheel? And I was like, this is unhinged. This
Yeah,
is I do not need this.
but it's
And then
got
I figured out that there was a button to like turn that on and off, and I was like, oh, this is kind of cool.
yeah, it's nice. 3 year battery life. It's decently accurate. It's nothing special, but for $20, it's a really good mouse, and like they're cheap enough that I can buy them to be everywhere. So I've got like one at home and one at, or I think I bought two for my day job. I bought a few for the shop. Like they're just everywhere because they're cheap enough and decent.
Yeah, I use a Razer Mamba is
Okay.
my preferred one. Just because it's like a fairly bog standard mouse kind of shape. I don't like the really fancy feeling mice.
hmm
I just like a standard shape. But the Mamba's got like a couple extra buttons on the side that you can set up as hotkeys.
Is it
Um,
wireless or wired?
you can get either one.
Okay.
So I've got a wireless one at home, and then I've got a wired one here. But the wireless one can be both wired or wireless.
Oh, that's neat.
Um,
Is
and
that
then
how it
it's got like
charges?
a yeah, it's just got like this like you can clip on a cable kind of thing. And it's got a charging dock, so you can just set it on the charging dock to kind of charge. I don't know, they're nice. I definitely will continue to get them. I've been a fan.
They're not super expensive either. Like $48, it looks like.
For the wired one, yeah, I think it's like $48, and it's like $100 for the wireless one.
Yeah, that's not too bad at all.
But yeah, I mean nothing's super special either. Just kind of a basic looking mouse with a nice shape and some little buttons on the side.
Yeah.
I
All right.
got it more when I first got built my computer. My personal computer was built for video editing, so for like the cut key, just being able to like hit a button to pull up the like razor blade tool kind of thing.
hmm
So
I know people love the CAD mouse from 3D Connections, but I just never can like.
that's the Space Mouse one.
Yeah, well, but they have like a mouse too that has
Oh,
three
okay.
buttons,
Huh.
like three top buttons and a scroll wheel and side buttons.
The
And
worst I've seen is I saw someone using a trackpad for CAD once.
I have done that in a pinch on my laptop, and it's terrible.
It's so bad.
Yeah, it's like ugh, yeah, that's no fun. So yeah, the Space Mouse one or the CAD mouse is $119, but
Okay.
it looks like it's got less DPI than the one you have. It's 7,200. I think yours is 15,000, but it does
Yeah,
have
and
the
this thing
three.
tracks really, really well. And then it's also got like adjustable DPI, which is really nice.
Yeah,
Or adjusted sensitivity, sorry. Um,
yeah. I think that the middle mouse button is like you can change it what it does, so that I
I
guess
think I
could be
can do
cool.
that on my Razor, and I don't know why you would ever do that, but
Yeah, I don't know either.
I think you can actually change left click to be right click and right click to be left click even on these razors.
Ew, ew. That
Is
just seems so weird.
yeah, because it's got
Uh,
like this whole software that you can open with it.
yeah,
But
like I like my space mouse. I like using the hotkeys on that, but I don't know that I would use extra.
do you like the Space Mouse?
I I go back and forth.
I've never
Uh,
used one.
When
I
I'm
don't know if I
doing,
would like it or not.
it definitely takes some time to get used to. Like if you get one, I can guarantee you'll hate it initially. Like Brad never used it, and I used it and bought one for the shop for my house and stuff. And initially he hated it, and like now he uses it occasionally. It's like an acquired skill. Like it's very sensitive right off the bat, and so you'll just like spin your model off into nowhere real quick. But the second you start getting used to it, it's kind of nice. And then it's got two hotkeys on the outside, and so I set those to control and shift, and that way I can hold one of them while I'm clicking stuff and rotating the model all at the same time. So like if I want to pick up a bunch of surfaces to fill it or something like that.
So this is a dumb question, but do you use the space mouse in conjunction with a normal mouse, or does it replace your normal mouse completely?
No, it's a you have to use both. It's just for navigating the model.
Got it. Okay. Because I've always been like really confused how you use that if you like need to scroll around to like to grab a tool or like click on something.
Yeah,
So it's just for like orbiting.
just for orbiting. Yeah. It
Is it really that much better than just middle clicking?
I don't know. I used to say that it was, and then like I've kind of gone to using both now. Like if it's close by, I find that if I'm doing a lot of modeling, I like using it and I like separating it out. But if I'm just tool pathing stuff real quick, very often I'll just end up using the middle mouse button.
It would be cool if you could like middle mouse and zoom at the same time.
Well, and so if you're using both, you can that's what the 3D connections does. Is like you can the whole top thing is spring mounted, and so you can rotate the model and zoom in or zoom out or pan all at the same time.
That does sound kind of cool.
Yeah.
And it's
So
maybe worth getting one and just giving it a try at some point.
yeah, you can find them on eBay for cheaper than standard. Especially the corded ones. I think I got my first corded one for like $50 or something like that.
Cool. Yeah, I'll check that out.
All right. Next question was from Seal Instrument. Andrew asked, how have your strategies and tool selections changed from going from a Tormach to a larger VMC?
Um, Honestly, the change isn't that large, except for just figuring out feeds and speeds was the biggest one for me. I mean, having that extra, like going from 10,000 to 16,000 RPM, just changes kind of the whole dynamic of where your tools lie. I mean, it just shifts the whole, like, normally, like on a 10,000 RPM spindle, anything under 3/8 is just flat out kind of thing,
Mm-hmm.
in aluminum at least. And on the 16K spindle, now it's more like anything under quarter is flat out. Um, and so that's a little bit interesting. And then just kind of figuring out where the limits of things are because it's just so much more torque. Um, Again, just like a good example is the FCR, but just like not knowing where the limit is. I finally found one point where the Speedio can't do something with the FCR, and it was the ramping. Like you have to limit how hard you ramp with the FCR. It just starts chattering, and it's like, okay, that shouldn't be chattering when the tool is like 2 inches long, integral to the spindle practically. So, but I mean, it's really just figuring out feeds and speeds, and more than feeds and speeds, more like the cut parameters, like in a adaptive clearing, like how much larger width of cut you can take on the Speedio than you can on a Tormach has really been the bigger one for me. Like the kind of standard rule of thumb I use on the Tormach kind of went out the window, and it's more just like see where the end mill doesn't break kind of thing.
Yeah, run it till
Um,
it breaks and back off 10%. Then you're good.
yep. So, I mean, it hasn't changed too much, and tooling wise, I mean, tooling selections, um, I'm running a lot of the same tools. Um, I've maybe started jumping a little bit more into the larger cutting diameters, using a little bit less quarter and moving more into 3/8 and half inch. I've got a couple half-inch tools now that I don't think I would have ever tried in the Tormach. Um, and like a I've got on special order right now from Mari Tool. I've got a 5/8 inch end mill with a 2 inch length of cut. Um, that I'm gonna run in. I've got a big Kaiser hydraulic holder. That's gonna go in. Just for finishing like tall walls of parts.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing how you like that because I've been thinking about stepping up into a 5/8 or a 3/4 for like just light finishing of taller parts.
Yeah, I think Frank said that it'll be on the website in like a couple weeks.
Awesome.
Because it'll be a standard stock item then. Um, so
Going
uh,
back to finishing end mills real quick too. I've been really wanting to try the Swift Carb AF5, I think they are, or AF4 finishing end mills.
yeah, I honestly had never heard of Swift Carb until like a couple days ago when uh, one ear Tim was posting some crazy looking parts that he was making with some Swift Carb stuff.
Well, do you follow Frontline Fab on Instagram?
Yeah.
So he is not only uses exclusively Swift Carb for all of those amazing surface finishes, but he's also a dealer of uh
Oh, okay.
yeah. So
Yeah,
like,
he's got some crazy looking finishes off that Akuma.
oh my goodness, it is like so
It
love
makes
worthy.
it makes the stuff I'm coming pulling off my Speedio look like garbage.
Yeah, same. It
Um,
makes me just want that machine, and I know that it's not just that machine. He's clearly like an incredible programmer and knows how to get those kind of finishes. But man, it is just like drool worthy finishes.
yeah. No, I mean it's I'm a little bit afraid of. I mean, it's again going back to kind of Andrew's question. The every bone in my body says do not put a 5/8 inch 2 inch length of cut with a 45-degree helix in your spindle. It'll pull out. And then I remember that there's a pull stud, and it's
Right.
not a straight shank.
Yeah, it's not TCS anymore. You're going to be all right.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
just seems so wrong, kind of thing.
Oh yeah.
But
Yeah. I think it'll be really nice though to be able to finish taller walls. Like I can get a pretty decent finish from a 1/2 inch, 2 inch length of cut. But I, there's always room for improvement for sure.
absolutely. I mean, I was running at like 1,000 SFM on that, or I was running at like 900 SFM on that 1/2 inch, 2 inch length of cut I've got from. It's an HTC, I think,
Hmm.
end mill. Um, again, I think I just got it. I got it from Mari Tool, but I was running that on. I've got these big like electronics housings I'm running right now that are like 2 inch wall. Um, and they start as like an 11 pound block and end at like half a pound. Um, but the that 2 inch length of cut end mill, I was running at like 900 SFM because I thought it was going to chatter if with the super long length of cut. And you said bump it up to 8,000, and it ended up for both roughing and finishing working out better
Oh,
at
awesome.
8,000. So
Yeah, it's definitely, 4 times diameter is when 30 taper definitely starts showing its weaknesses a little bit.
yeah, I mean it chattered a little bit, but I just had to like remove spring passes. Like I couldn't take a spring pass with that tool.
Yeah, yeah, it really, really does not like spring passes. Like, and you always have to leave more stock to leave for the finishing than you'd expect.
Yeah, and my parts were coming out like I don't know 8 thou oversized kind of thing.
Oh wow.
Just from probably deflection, but also maybe because I was running a little bit too fast. And that might be solved a little bit with the high accuracy stuff. Because I've been definitely running into that a little bit on this video, where if you run too quickly, things come out either undersized or oversized, depending on if it's an internal or external feature.
Right.
Um, but in order to not take a spring pass, I just comped the tool in, and that worked fine. I
Yeah,
was running 3 parts, so
I'd be interested next time you have that issue if you don't have your A settings dialed yet to turn on the old high speed paths in Fusion and see if it eliminates it.
yeah, might be worth a try because it's primarily on like when I've got an end mill diameter close to the bore size, and I'm feeding at like 60 inches a minute up, then the Speedio just cuts like significantly undersize.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, like, and I shared that Harvey document with you too, didn't I?
I don't
Feed
think
rate
so.
reduction in corners. So if you
You
go,
may have, and I do not remember.
I'll
Um,
find it and send it to you again. So Harvey has a good one. They automatically put it in the speeds and feeds docs for any of their thread mills, but really on any internal hole with an end mill, you have to reduce your feed because it's actually not representative of a true feed because it's the diameter of the end mill, if that makes sense. Like you're feeding from the center of the end mill, but it's actually the diameter of the end mill that's interacting with the wall. And so on external features, you should technically increase your feed, and on internal features, you should decrease your feed.
gotcha.
And the
That makes sense.
yeah, they give it in their technical charts, I want to say, but it's like the major diameter of the hole minus the diameter of your cutter over the cutter diameter times your feed rate gives you what you actually should be feeding at. And so like usually what it does is it takes into account how close you are to that diameter of the hole and really decreases your feed rate.
Yeah, that'll be definitely worth taking a look at. I mean, I haven't now that the first time I like brought that problem to you, and I was like, I don't know what I'm doing wrong. And you were like, why are you feeding so quickly? I've now dropped it down to slightly more reasonable feed rates, and I have not had as many issues with it.
Yeah. Yeah.
It was also like the first 2 weeks of owning the Speedio. The one thing when they like the apps guy was like, any questions about the control? I like the one question I forgot to ask was, how do you use the cutter comp? Um, and so for like the first 2 weeks of owning the Speedio, I was like not willing to use cutter comp because I didn't know how to use it.
Oh,
Um,
jeez.
and it was like, because it was, I couldn't figure out which of the two boxes you put it in because they have one called cutter comp and then one called wear.
Hmm.
And I didn't know if you could put like half-inch diameter in cutter comp and it will ignore that if you post out. Like on a Haas machine, I think you can put a diameter in and it will ignore the diameter and only use the wear column, if that makes sense. If I'm
Oh, really?
remembering correctly. Um, because that would be nice because then you can just have your tool table where you can quickly look at what diameter tool is supposed to be in that position.
Right.
But I didn't know if that was how Brother worked or if they like used like a sum of the two values and it was like, you know what, I'm not going to crash this machine right away. So
Yeah, I
obviously
think
that's
that's probably
out.
safe. Yeah, I think it'll take into account either of them or both of them if you post out where. I haven't experimented with that though.
I think it does take both of them.
Yeah,
It's a sum of the two values, is my understanding.
right. But
I
you could
read
use
through the
both.
manual a little bit and asked a couple people, and that's the general consensus.
Yeah, and I
So,
think that both are only there if you're doing in control comp, and you would put your diameter in the first one, and then any wear in the second one.
yes. So what I do is I touch off my tools and then I set it back to 0. Um and then just post out where out of Fusion. Because my Renishaw probe macros use that cutter comp value.
Oh, okay.
That's my predicted value, and that's how it knows for 3/8 inch tools and larger to offset half the stylus, and then rotate.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I didn't even think about that. Yeah, I forgot the head on those is significantly smaller than what I'm used to.
I think it's a 10 millimeter diameter stylus.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That makes more sense.
So for larger tools, you have to offset. And what I still need to get or make, and I think this is partially, I think this is actually Yamazen is working with Renishaw on this for me, which is being able to touch off non-rotating tools. because I
Oh,
don't really want to spin my 2-inch Sandvik face mill with that PCD insert on the off chance that it would either chip out the $150 insert or scrape up the top of my Renishaw probe stylus.
oh, you have
Since
no way to not rotate tools?
no, so right now any tool that's not on my probe or that's larger than I'm comfortable running on there, like insert tools, I
Hmm.
touch those off the table.
What? Oh man, I feel like we should be able to fix your macro for that pretty easily.
Well, so what's interesting is all my macros are actually written by my apps guy, and
Uh
he
huh.
he took a bunch of time to try and figure out how to make that macro work, and he couldn't figure it out. He like came by for like 4 hours and just sat here in front of my machine while I was like doing other stuff, and just tried to figure it out. And he like kept calling Renishaw, and apparently it's some weird bug with actually the Renishaw itself interfacing with the Speedio. So Renishaw is like working on it, last I heard,
Oh really?
or something. And then there's also something that Brother itself I think has to fix. So a little frustrated that they're fixing this on the that they've got a new control and they still haven't fixed this on the C00. But the when my probe cycle finishes, it does a G28 or I think it's either G53 or G28 move to home,
Hmm.
and it alarms out because it like says Z over travel. But you run it 5 times, it'll alarm out 4 times, and the fifth time it'll work, kind of thing.
What?
It's this bizarre like brother bug where when it goes to Z home, it like errors out.
Huh. That is weird.
And I called my apps guy the first time it happened. He's like, "Oh yeah, that's normal. Just hit reset." He's like, he's like, "It recorded your tool value. You can double check in your tool table, but it finished doing what it needed to do."
Oh, that's super weird. Yeah. Uh, I would imagine that you're having issues just because they don't sell many Renishaws.
I think I'm like the second one in the Midwest to have a
Yeah.
TS27R.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Actually, not even a TS27R. All of my macros were written for an OTS,
Hmm.
and they just happen to work pretty much the same for the TS27R.
Yeah, you just don't have to turn it on and off, really,
Yeah.
or not the same way at least.
Well, that's the problem actually with the OMI that I've got. That has to be turned on and off with relays because of the skips. There's only one skip signal input in the C00.
Right.
So in order to have two probes, you need to be able to have like a relay to swap between them.
Right. I think that a lot of machines are like that. I know that when they were installing the probe on our Matsura at work, it was the same thing.
Yeah, no, and I mean the only exception to that is if you have both an OTS and a OMP40 on a Speedio, then you only have one skip signal anyways.
Right. Yeah, that
But
makes sense. Well, good luck on that. So, real quick before we wrap up, you already kind of mentioned lathe tooling, but what did you research this week besides Capto?
um, let's see, a bunch of different things. Was looking into honing a little bit this week. Um, I've got that hone, the Sun and Hone. I haven't
Hmm.
actually used it yet, but I realized that the solution to one of my lathe tooling problems, I've got this little Comet boring bar that I really want to use. Is this awesome tiny little WNMG insert that can do a 3/16 inch ID bore.
Oh, it's tiny.
It's super tiny, and it's got this 8 millimeter shank on it. But finding an 8 millimeter to 3/4 shank adapter does not exist because my turret block, or 8 millimeter to 1 inch actually, because my turret block holes are all 1 inch on my lathe.
Oh, wow.
So finding a 8 millimeter to 1 inch or 8 millimeter to 3/4 or 8 millimeter any imperial size does not exist. Don't know why that doesn't exist. I feel like someone has to have had this problem before, but it does not exist. And I was like always like, oh, I'll just make a holder when I get time, and I really want to use this boring bar, but I can't. Well, I realized I'm just being an idiot. 8 millimeter is only 2.5 thou larger than 5/16.
Right.
So I just get a 5/16 one and hone it.
Oh, sweet.
So I just ordered some micro 100 boring bar holders, and I got two of them in case I screw one of them up. But so I've been looking into like proper amount of pressure for honing and like how much it should be taking off per pass, and I don't. It's definitely a whole nother rabbit hole kind of thing.
Oh, cool. That should be a lot of fun.
Yeah. How about you?
So, I talked about it a little bit last week. I We finished ordering our compressor, so I'd been doing a lot of research at the beginning of the week, and yeah, we ordered a 10 horsepower variable drive screw compressor that should be here in 2 weeks, I think.
Very jealous.
I'm so excited.
That's
I
awesome.
I mean, you heard it how loud our compressor was when you were at the shop. Well,
Yeah.
I don't even know if we had our new compressor, right? We had our Eaton already. That was
Yeah, I think
supposedly
so.
the quiet version. Yeah, supposedly the quiet version. So yeah, we're getting that pretty soon here, and I am just overjoyed. I'm so excited.
That is super awesome.
Yeah,
It
and it's
was
like way overkill for our shop, but the price difference between like a 5 horsepower, a 7.5 horsepower, and a 10 horsepower is not that much. And because it's variable speed and all that, like I'm not going to be hurting the compressor at all, underutilizing it, and it kind of future proofs for more machines down the line.
you missed off out on the deal of a lifetime though. By the way,
Which is what
I don't know if you saw a random fabrication on Instagram.
I did. I saw the SX6 that he was posted. I was like, oh man, if only I hadn't ordered this already.
Exactly. I mean, you got the advantage of the warranty though.
Yeah,
So,
yeah,
uh,
so it's a good warranty. It's a good compressor. It'll be fine. And actually, I found out after ordering it, like they advertise a 10-year warranty, but if you sign up for auto ordering of filters and oil, it's a limited lifetime warranty on the pump and motor.
that's awesome. That's so you got the Eaton one.
Yeah, so it's an Eaton. Yeah,
That's unfortunate because the Eaton one is the ugliest one out of all of them. But
hey, but it's only one letter away from your name, right? So it's
yeah,
good,
yeah.
I guess.
I just wish they wouldn't have gone with that like shade of yellow.
Yeah, it's pretty ugly. Our
I'm not a
current
big fan of the
compressor,
Atlas Copco one though either. I
the
like the look of
gray.
the Kaiser ones, but I mean, at the end of the day, looks don't matter compared to specs. So,
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. So
um,
it's even more CFM. Not that we're using half of what we currently have. Uh, Actually, I had somebody ask me today about that. He was like, "Oh, the Harbor Freight air dryer is only good up to like 20 something CFM," and I was like, "Yeah, but we're not using even 20." Like I looked it up, and the Speedios take 1.5 CFM.
yeah, I've got a 10 CFM dryer in my shop
Yeah. Well, and like
because
we bought
my
a
lathe takes nothing.
we bought a 10 horsepower piston compressor because the Kitty took I think 10 or 12 CFM,
Dang,
and
that
like
is
that.
impressive.
Yeah, it was just a pain in the ass. So anyway, I'm happy with what we got. I can't wait for it to come in and for the shop to be just actually be able to hear myself think, like
So, is
not
it the
have to
same
wear
power
earplugs.
requirements, or do you need an electrician to come out or anything?
No, we'll just wire it up. We wired up our other one.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
That's awesome. That's gonna be definitely on the list of purchases to make. Thankfully, I'm a lathe shop mostly, so lathes take like zero air if you buy a good one.
Well, I
Um,
guess yeah, it's all hydraulic.
Haas lathes are completely pneumatic, but not completely, but pretty close to completely pneumatic,
Hmm.
and they wear out really easily. Like all the pneumatic stuff, if you have any wet air, it just destroys those lathes. But the yeah, my lathe is completely hydraulic except for the parts catcher. That's the only pneumatic thing on my lathe.
That's awesome.
So
So
It
I'm
doesn't take
looking
any air.
for it right now. But speaking of my purchases, like the other thing we had talked about was a saw, and we're not buying it right now. But somebody had reached out that there is a company. Where is the post? There's a company that makes a fully automatic saw for 10K, like that will cut up to a 12-inch diameter or something like that.
Dang, that's awesome. Because I
Yeah,
was gonna say, I mean, the other option is the Tormach bandsaw.
yeah,
Uh,
I've actually heard pretty decent things about it.
things are really accurate, actually. It's very accurate. I mean, it's a little bit jerky for my liking, but it's overall there's like nothing in that price range that's even close to as accurate and repeatable kind of thing. So I
Totally.
know Ben has just been killing it with that saw, making the FML lights.
Yeah, he seems to really like it.
Um, yeah,
Man,
but
yeah,
the
I can't find the post, but if I do find it, I'll post it in the. I'll post it in a story or something like that. I was just looking at it yesterday. I don't know where it went.
that'd be awesome. I'd love to see that. And then yeah, I mean the compressor is definitely on my list too. Just more out of like fear. I think I've said to you is the right now I'm enjoying the high life of no compressor.
Oh, that's right.
I have zero compressor, so I don't have any compressor sound. I don't have anything in my shop. My shop is just silent. It is really nice.
I totally forgot about that.
So there's actually two Quincy, I think they're 150-gallon compressors, up in like a shelf in the other room, that feed airlines like these giant galvanized 2-inch pipes everywhere in the building,
Hmm.
full of air. One of the Quincy compressors has been dead for the last like 5 years, and like the pump itself is worn out. And ironically, it's the Quincy that's brand new. Like it's only like a 10-year-old Quincy
Hmm.
is the one with the dead pump, and then the like 30-year-old Quincy is still running. Um, but it runs almost 100% duty cycle
Yikes.
between the two machine shops, and it gets its oil changed maybe once every 8 months. So
Yeah, that makes me a little nervous for you. So I, I don't blame
so
you.
it's one of those things where, luckily, again, the Speedio is really the only thing that uses air in my shop. That and parts cleaning. So if I had to, I could just go out to Home Depot and get like a 80-gallon Husky kind of thing and be fine. But
Yeah.
I'm hoping that the Quincy will hold on long enough that I can get a screw compressor. Because,
Well, I did see too. Somebody reached out after I'd already bought the Easton that Eastwood has
oh,
those.
the scroll compressors, I've heard
Yes.
really bad things about those.
So they now have a 10 horsepower one too. And
Interesting.
I've heard both good and bad things. Like some people seem to really love them and some people seem to hate them.
Well, it was one of those things where it didn't, Austin had one, and it just totally like bricked after a year, right?
Oh, really?
I think so.
Oh,
I
well,
think
then
he was
never
running
mind.
his Speedy off of one of those, and then he ended up going with the Atlas Copco one.
Oh, okay. Well, never mind that. I thought that
Yeah, I don't know. I've
the thing.
heard I've seen at least one or maybe two people where the things just bricked after a very short period of time.
Yeah, hard pass then. I'm happy I got what
Yeah,
I got then.
so I think you made
And
the right
then
choice too.
yeah.
I think you and Urban Survival Gear, Kelvin, I think have the same compressor then.
Oh, really? I'll have to go back through his stories and find out. And then the other thing I've been researching is from Pete Oxenham, and he had that blog post about how to make custom operation post options in Fusion 360. And so I'm starting to go down that rabbit hole of how to add a high speed code box to each operation.
That'll be really awesome too. Big
Yeah.
shout out to Pete too for his Discord profile picture. That cracks me up every single day. Just like the and the fact that his company name also cracks me up.
It's what, FTP
I
or
think
FTR?
I don't remember fully, but I thought it was a Workaholics reference.
Oh, is it?
I think so.
Yeah, it's FTR CNC.
Oh yeah, it's fully torqued. That's what it
Oh.
is. Yeah.
All right, that makes more sense.
Yep.
Yeah, fully torqued racing. Okay.
That's awesome.
That
That's
is.
and like it's for sure confirmed a like a workaholics reference too,
That's
because
fantastic.
I think someone asked him if, or I think it was Jeff on the Discord asked him if it was, and he said it was. So
Yeah, that's great.
that's definitely awesome. That's a good show.
Oh yeah.
So
Well, again, thanks for coming on, and
absolutely.
thanks everybody for sticking with it. You know, it's going to take me probably a week or two to get in the swing of things, doing this on my own and rotating in guests. But we got a whole bunch of past guests and some new guests that have offered to come on and guest host, and we're going to kind of do it. I think this style for a little while, where somebody comes on and acts as my counterpart and takes questions, and I'll post the week of, make sure that you guys know who's coming on, and yeah, we'll go through our normal, what did you research, shop new things, all that stuff, and we'll kind of get to dig in a little more with each of our guests. So again, thanks for sticking with me, and we'll see you next week.
Yep. See you guys.